And the Anything Podcast. I'm Aaron. You're
I'm Chris. I am Chris.
Here we go.
What is going on?
Well, I had a really good time. So
A really good time when?
on Friday,
Oh, for cards?
we
Yes.
played the game Cards Against Humanity.
We love that game. It's such a fun game. Are you resorting to the picture that you've taken?
I don't know if
To
we
the
can
card.
mention the horridness of that
I think it was pretty funny.
on the air.
Yeah, why not? Who cares a shit? It's not like what you call it? It's not like we're on the news or anything.
That's true.
There are no rules to podcasting.
I guess there's not. And we do enjoy something in the United States called freedom of speech.
We do, yes.
And, you know, there's a lot of problems. We got a lot of problems in the United States, but we do enjoy freedom of speech, which is great because a lot of countries don't. So should we exercise our freedom of speech?
Yes, otherwise I'm going to read it.
No, it's you go for it. Go for
All
it.
right, so we had a card. Let me get it ready and bring it up so people can see it. I don't know.
Get your angles right. Do you remember the game Arkanoid? It's an old game you used to play in the video.
I don't know.
It's the little
No,
ball.
I-
It goes bink, 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 and you got to
Isn't
break the
that
blocks with
Pong?
the ball. It's the next generation of Pong. It was called Arkanoid. There's a little round thing that you...
Yeah, no, I haven't played that. I only know Pong.
Okay, well, it's for
All
Nintendo.
right, so here is the card,
need to
and
get
these
your
are.
angles right.
We had 8 people playing or something the other day,
I think so.
and it said, "For my next trick, I will pull blank out of blank." And we had 3 really crazy cards from 3 people. 2 of them I think were funny. I'm not sure. The third one, you can explain why you thought that one was funny. This is your card, correct?
No, I
This was
had
your
garbage.
round?
It was a garbage. Yeah,
This was yeah.
I read
so
it, yeah.
This was your round. You were the card czar at this point. So
Yeah.
you were reading the black card that says, "For my next trick, I will pull blank out
Yeah.
of blank."
Yeah.
So there were 3 cards, 3 separate people that put in these cards, and it was, "For my next trick, I will pull African children out of the KKK." For the next one, for my next trick, I will pull 72 virgins out of suicide bombers. And for my next trick, I will pull altar boys out of ghosts. Now that one I'm not too sure on.
I think it was Ghosts out of Altar Boys. I think that
I
the
don't know.
cards were backwards on there.
Okay, well if I will pull ghosts out of altar boys.
Yeah.
Why don't you explain why that you thought that one was really funny? Because I personally didn't think it was like funny.
It's just weird because you know, religion.
Yeah, but do they believe in ghosts?
You know, they sure do.
Purgatory?
Yeah, the heavenly ghost of our Father or whatever.
Purgatory.
It's just funny, but they're horrible.
Oh yeah. So it was pretty funny. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, we had a really hilarious night.
Yep.
As always.
Yep.
And one of the cool topics, if you would you gonna get off your phone or what?
Then, well, the other one, so we did last week, which was hilarious too, and we might as well say it again.
I
'Cause
think
this
we
is the
talked
best
about
one.
the Martell.
Yeah,
the
new
Barbie.
for Mattel, it's Black Barbie. Did we read them all?
Yeah, we did it on our podcast already.
Well, my first kill Barbie was hilarious.
And that was the car I put down.
And the one we didn't read is Viagra is a slippery slope that leads to penis breath. That's the best one.
All right, so Aaron's going to put his phone away.
Yeah.
And
I do what I want, by the way.
No, because then... so actually, one of the things that we talked about, as it usually is brought up when we are at cards, is somehow it's the Mandela effect. It comes into play. And for those of you who don't know what the Mandela effect is, it is the effect that a vast part of the population thinks that they have known one way or one thing to be true and thought that. So the example that we were talking about was the Sinbad dilemma, where Sinbad was, if you ask people and say, hey, do you remember the genie movie that Sinbad played in? A lot of people will say, oh yeah, that movie was called Shazam. But the reality of the situation is that never actually took place or happened. There was no movie. If you research it online in terms of like looking up like what Sinbad says, he's like, I have never starred in that movie. There is no movie. Quit bugging me about it. He actually gets pretty pissed off about it in one of the things that I've seen on it. And there's many other phenomena with it. Some are stretches. Some are like, oh, it could go either way. And then some are like, whoa, I actually remember that. And one of the big things was the Berenstein or the Berenstein Bears. That was a big one. And then the reason why it's called the Mandela effect is because of Nelson Mandela. And Mandela was, a lot of people thought that he died in jail. Was it in the 80s or 90s?
It was the 80s.
The 80s. And, but he actually ended up dying very recently, and was not in jail. But yeah, that's where, and a lot of the population thinks one thing and is kind of like behind this. So they're talking about the Mandela effect, and that's where the name of it came from.
Right. So I asked people at my job if they remember the genie movie with Sinbad, and like, oh yeah, Shazam or Kazam.
Shazam.
Yeah.
Kazam is an actual
Kazam
movie.
too.
Huh?
They said Kazam or Shazam. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I'm not remembering this wrong, am I? I'm like, Sinbad is the genie. And I'm like, he didn't voice the genie. He is the genie. And they're like, yeah. And I just like led them in the right direction. And all these people seem to remember it.
Well, I've done that too with a friend of mine. And because we were talking about the Mandela effect at one point, and I said the exact same thing. I said, hey, do you remember that movie that Sinbad was in where he played a genie? And he's like, oh, yeah. I think it was called Shazam or something like that. And that's I'll lead the same kind of question the way you did as well, too. And most of the time it's like they'll say Shazam. But in the reality of the situation, the genie movie that actually did come out that you can actually go and watch at any point you want is called Kazam. And it's with Shaq. So Shaq is the one who plays the genie, and the movie is actually called Kazam, and it came out in mid-90s. So it was a lot of overlapping things when it came to, Sinbad, Shaq, both beginning with S's, being a genie movie, the name Shazam, Kazam, very close. There was a lot of similarities between it, but there's like these minor details that change. And a lot of the population, like you said, when you asked people at work, and you led them that way, they said Shazam and said, oh yeah, like Sinbad was the genie.
Yes. And I don't understand why I remember Sinbad being a genie and other people remember Sinbad being a genie. And you don't suggest that Sinbad was a genie. You just say, do you remember Sinbad? And they're like, yeah. Everyone thinks it's him. I don't know why. So that's the Mandela effect, because what happened was when they turned on CERN, then it created a ripple in time. And that's the ripple we're living in right now, which is very interesting. What I wanted to talk to you about.
Well, they're also saying there's also the other idea that with the multiverse,
yes,
that there's a universe that's very much like us. And with quantum computing, they say that, a particle can be either a 1 or a 0 or a 0 and a 1 at the same time. And then they try to look like quantum tunneling tries to go to a state where it's at its lowest peak or it's at its lowest rest. And I'm very much not covering the true specifics of what quantum computing really is. But if you listen to one of the talks on, online, which you could find on YouTube, where it's the guy who's like in this quantum computer, and I forget what the name of the company is, but he's like, oh yeah, we're borrowing energy from other universes or the multiverse, and what they're saying is that we're quantum entangled with another multiverse that's very similar to ours, yet there's minor differences, and that's where there's crossover where people are getting confused.
Yeah, well, quantum computing is interesting because in normal computing, a bit is either a 0 or a 1. In quantum computing, bits can be 0 and 1 because they're
Yes.
quantum. They're zeros and ones at the same time, which opens up a lot more computing power, which is going to be very interesting in the future. But so let's finish up with the Mandela effect. It's not just Shazam. What happened? Oh,
I don't know. We have virus protection. That means
uh-oh.
they're trying to attack us because we're talking about the Mandela effect right now.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So, other examples are the Forrest Gump sitting on the bench when he says his famous chocolate line.
Life is like a box of chocolate.
Yes. So,
You never know what you're gonna get.
yes. So, apparently the line is life was like a box of chocolates. I didn't know that, and people remember it differently. Berenstain Bears is a great one. Curious George. Do you remember Curious George? He doesn't have a tail, but people remember him with the tail.
Yeah, it was swinging around.
Yeah, one that
on
was
the
kind of
trees.
like,
But I don't, honestly, I don't remember. I mean, I've gone through a lot of them, and I don't remember Curious George ever having a tail either.
Yeah.
Like I remember when they showed like the cartoon, it was always him swinging with his hands or whatever you want to call them in the trees. I never saw him like swinging by the tail.
apparently
so.
people remember him having a tail. There's a lot of them that were kind of like iffy, but it's just a false memory. It's remembering
like the
something
logo,
Yeah.
like the Ford logo. If you look at the Ford logo, there's like this little swiggle at the F, and
Yeah.
it's like I don't remember it ever like that, but it's always like that. And then like they're like, oh, I just remember it just like a flat,
Yeah.
and it's right at the F point where it's that cross section where it's got the F,
Yeah.
and it's like it's an actual swiggle, but yeah. And then like Volkswagen, and I mean there's a lot of different logos, but that's the whole thing. Like logos, you can make them, you can vary them just a little bit, and it looks like it's right, and you're going to trick a lot of people because you right there, like the whole thing where they give you the multiple choice, which is either 1 or 2, logo 1 or logo 2. You're like trying to make a decision, and it's like, well, you're going to be half right or half wrong because that looks right and that looks right. It's just what's the difference?
Yeah. Well, logos are very interesting in themselves because they all have different pictures and
Oh yeah.
different symbols that you would never notice. But the worst one for me, my friend ruined Starbucks for me.
Why?
Did no one's have ruined the Starbucks logo for you?
No, I know what the Starbucks logo is, but why don't you
Okay.
tell people who don't
You've
know?
never seen it? Okay.
Yeah, I know what
So
Starbucks logo is.
the Starbucks logo, but it's not ruined for you as it is for me.
no,
no
because
one's ruined it
I
for
don't
you.
care. I know I know what it is behind it, but I don't really care because I don't go to Starbucks.
Okay.
I just
So
don't like it.
for anyone looking at the Starbucks logo, if you look at it, the young lady in the Starbucks logo is holding her legs. That's what she's doing in it. And I never noticed that. But until you look at it and you see both of her arms holding her legs, it's forever ruined for me. And it
Why?
makes sense. Well, because before that it's just a girl with the thing. Now every time
Well,
I look
see,
at it,
to
I see
me-
a girl that's holding her legs.
So, see, to me, I think the coffee is shit anyways. So it makes sense because she's holding her legs, she's shitting out the coffee.
Probably.
So everybody's drinking shit coffee.
Yeah.
And it's marked up to $6 a fucking cup. So enjoy your crappy cup of coffee.
I have never had Starbucks coffee. I don't know how it is, but I have had Starbucks cake pops, which are delicious. It's a little ice cream cake pop thing. It's a sucker. It's made out of cake. It's delicious.
Yeah, I don't drink coffee in general, so I like if I have to go there, I usually get hot chocolate. But yeah, I'm not really a fan. I don't go to Starbucks unless I have to, like if I'm meeting somebody there or whatnot. I usually go to Tim Hortons, and I don't even go there either because it's just not great. Like it's not good for you.
I don't know.
Especially us talking about how we want to eat healthier and live healthier and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Those places aren't good to go to.
I don't know. I have no opinion on the matter because I've had Tim Hortons, which is only people in the Midwest may not know what Tim Hortons is because it's a Canadian company. But I've never had Starbucks. But anyway, yeah, looking up different logos, Now, the Joe Camel logo for cigarettes, there's a lot of shady stuff going on with that. The Mandela effect is very interesting. The Sinbad one, I don't even understand. The false memory with Forrest Gump is another great example. Another one that I don't recall that's not really Mandela effect, but C-3PO. C-3PO
Oh, with the gold leg?
has a golden leg.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Well, that's the same thing. Like, a lot of people will say, "Oh no, he's all the same color,"
Yeah.
and then he's all gold, and then you look and he's got a silver leg.
Yeah.
And it's same
just
thing with
never
me.
noticed.
Like, I never noticed that because when I watched Star Wars, I was like a kid and I never really got into it. So I never really watched it, the rest of it. But the other Star Wars one is the famous line with Luke and Darth Vader.
Yes.
And do you know what the line is and what everybody says it is?
He says, "Luke, I'm your adoptive father."
No.
I know, but it's very interesting because everyone.
Luke,
Yeah.
I am your father.
But that's actually not the line. Do you know what the real line actually is?
It just says, "I'm your father."
No.
What is it?
It's oh Jesus, I don't even remember what it is now.
It's "I'm your
going on
father."
blank. No, it's
He
not.
just says, "I'm your father."
No, that's not it at all. He says something else. Look it up real quick.
Okay.
But the other one, the other one is also in China when they had, I think it was the Tibet kid, and he stood up against the tanks. Do you remember this back in, I think it was
Yes.
the late 80s?
I do. Yeah.
And
Tiananmen Square.
Tiananmen Square, yes. And a lot of people will say, "Oh no, I remember the tanks running him over and crushing him."
No,
in
I
the
don't remember
streets."
that.
And the actual thing was that the tank stopped and didn't do anything to the guy, to him. He was like,
See, I thought that's why the picture was famous, because that guy stopped the tank, and they never
Yeah.
found out who it was.
yeah,
It's a mystery guy.
exactly. And yeah, that's exactly how I remember it too, from everything. But then there's 5 oceans instead of 4.
Okay.
Did you know that?
No.
Yes. So and here's the funny thing, because I actually did the research on that. Because they'll say, "Oh my God, there's 5 oceans. I thought there was 4. I remember Pacific, Atlantic, Indian, and Arctic. But there's also another one,
What's the other one?
the Southern Ocean."
Okay.
Now, most people won't remember the Southern Ocean because when we were in school, we learned 4 oceans.
Oh.
They didn't put the Southern Ocean in until much more recently. So now newer places, and the reason why they put in the Southern Ocean is because it's actually a little bit different in the saline structure in that part of the water than the rest of the world around there. So that's why they have the Southern Ocean. So what people try to say, "Oh, that's the Mandela effect because I only remember 4 oceans." Well, no, they added an ocean because they realized that there's some changes in the ocean, in the Southern Ocean versus the Indian, the Pacific, and Atlantic and Arctic. So they had to change that a little bit.
Well, that's news to me. I thought there were 11 oceans. There's not 11 oceans?
No.
I thought there was Ocean's 11.
Well, no, I think there's Ocean's 13.
There definitely is. Luke says, so Darth Vader says, "I am your father." Actually, he actually says, "No, I am your father."
Yeah.
But he does not say, "Luke, I am your father." He says, "No, I am your father," or "I am your father."
Yeah, and everybody thinks that it's Luke, "I am your father."
So,
So there's all these minor changes to what people remember. So, but go ahead.
no, it's the Mandela effect, false memory.
Yeah, but
Very
I think
interesting.
you were trying to go. You wanted to say something too.
Well, I didn't tell you the story about how people get obsessed with things. People get obsessed with things. People are obsessed with Star Wars.
Oh yeah,
So,
I thought you were gonna go with like actual objects. Like,
Well, they could
I'm
get
obsessed
obsessed with
with
that.
my phone
Yeah.
and I can't put it down because
No.
I gotta look at it.
I'm in love with my car. And I'm obsessed with my car and in love with my car. So,
Are you marrying your car?
well, yep, definitely am. I kiss the bumper of the car. Yeah. So, when did the new series of Star Wars come out? Early 2000?
Which series?
The new ones, the old new ones.
Like episode 1?
Not Return of the Empire. The Empire Strikes Back. Return of the Jedi.
They did them in like crazy series. So like the very first movies came out were 4, 5, and 6.
Okay.
Then like I want to say maybe like 99 or around that range
Yes.
was 1, 2, and 3,
Yes.
which brought like the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And then it went to like all the newer movies that are now. But like I said, I never got into Star Wars, so I didn't really watch them.
Oh, you're right. It's 1999. All right.
I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
The only reason why I know that is because my one teacher was obsessed with Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I like, for some reason, like that comes into mind because like if you wanted to score extra points, you'd do some sort of like Star Wars reference and you'd get like an automatic A. So I remember like that happening, and that's why like that year was 99, 2000.
I had a college teacher that was the same thing. He loved the Star Wars. His ringtone was Star Wars. You could get
Turn.
Yeah. If you somehow worked Star Wars into your homework, you could get extra points. People get obsessed with it. So
What was the name of the professor?
I can't remember.
Damn.
Yeah, I think it was. Let me think.
That don't matter.
Yeah. Anyway, in 1999, we went to go see the new round of Star Wars that were coming out, and somehow the projector stopped working in the theater. Nice. And this poor kid in the back of the theater said, "Make the movie work. This is my life." And he freaked out. I'll never forget. This is my life.
Didn't that happen at like a couple of places though, where like there was problems? Like
I'll never forget the poor. So I mean, he was so upset. This is my life.
Oh my
People
God.
get obsessed
Were
with
you
it.
at the midnight showing by chance?
Probably. You know, it's weird. It's interesting. I also kept the ticket. I found all the ticket stubs from all the movies that I went to. Did you save things like that?
You know, I have some, but not all. Like I didn't go out of my way. It's just, you know, like we're guys. We stuff things in our pockets,
that's
and
what
when we take stuff out, we just throw it where it is, and then, you know, it gets shuffled somewhere else. So if it makes it to the garbage, it made it to the garbage. If it made it somewhere else, that's kind of how I was.
Well, one thing I'm glad that I did, I saved all my concert tickets from all the concerts that I've been to, and I'm glad that I have those because I can walk down memory lane. But I also had movie tickets for some reason. Concert tickets, they were all mixed in. Like, it's so weird. Why did I keep my ticket to the Phantom Menace? Who knows? I finally threw those away. But I'm glad I have all my concert tickets. A lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, I want to go back to circle
Yes.
back to the Mandela effect real quick. One of the things that we talked about before, one of the big, so Mandela effect again has quite a few people thinking one thing when in fact it's something else. So you kind of have like a split decision maybe where a good percentage of the population that are polled or talking about it or whatever it might be remember it one way when in fact it was really not, and you said false memories.
The Monopoly Man's monocle.
There's a lot of different
Yeah.
dude, there's like so
That's
many.
a good one. The Monopoly Man's monocle. I remember him having a monocle.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a monocle. Never had a monocle.
I remember the monocle too.
Yeah.
But I remember like cartoons and stuff having it.
You're probably
I don't
right.
remember the game having it because I never paid attention. And that's the whole other thing too. So like today's day and age, when we're looking at, you might not because you don't have Facebook, but when I scroll through Facebook and it shows different articles posted, and if I read the article's like title, it only like it might show something. It might say like whatever it might be. So I think certain things can get imprinted onto you without actually like going into the details. And the same thing with say, like I said, with the Monopoly monocle, with if he had it or not. Like I said, I remember playing the game. I played it often. I liked the game. But I also remember cartoons that he was wearing the monocle that might not be associated with the game itself. And so it imprints onto you because it's just that extra detail. And one of the big things you can do, and if you ever do this with people, it's actually kind of a fun experiment. What you can do is you can completely change your entire look and detail of how you look to somebody else in front of their eyes, and they won't know because they're not registering all the details, because the brain has to take in so much information and process so much that it only takes in pertinent information. So if you and I were having an exchange, say you were ordering a hamburger and I was taking your order, I can be on the register side, but I can have like a hat and glasses and a different shirt. And I can say, oh, hold on a second, and go grab something underneath the counter, put on glasses. You have to do it in steps and stages. You can't do it all at once, because otherwise the brain will be like, wait, you don't look the same. But if you do it like you do, like I look like myself now, and then I change away, come back, and I put glasses on, and it's, the brain only processes so much. And then there's also some good videos where you can, it's one where it's like 4 people who are throwing a ball, and they say, okay, count how many times the ball hits the ground or gets passed. You do something like that.
Yeah. Are you talking about Crouching Tiger, Hidden Gorilla?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in the middle of that, there's a gorilla that comes through and walks through, and a lot of people don't see it because they're so focused on one thing that they're not looking at the entire picture. But then if you're looking at the entire picture, you miss the ball being thrown. So there's this this teeter-totter, I guess you could say, where like if you notice the whole picture, you're not going to notice all the details. But if you notice just the details that they point out, you're not going to notice the whole picture. So it's like all of these things that can be imprinted onto you without you knowing. And I think that's how part of these things, and the whole thing with Shazam, going back to it again, you have a bigger black guy, Sinbad, and Shaq, very similar in names. You have a movie called Kazam and Shazam, literally the same names, except for a letter. And it's around the same time frame, like a year apart from each other. And it's about a genie. You think, all right, black guy, genie. Sinbad was very popular at that time because he had the movie House Guest. He had a couple other movies. He was in, what was that show? Hanging with Mr. Cooper, whatever. Oh no, was it?
I can't remember.
I don't know. He had some show though, and he was, popular comedian. So during that time frame, yeah, he was really popular. Then boom, he kind of went out of, he just like overnight, he just like left. And Shaq, it was kind of the same thing. Like he was starting his movie career, which kind of tanked too. So it was like all of these similarities that are very similar to each other. And somewhere it's just like, okay, somewhere the paths got crossed. So it's there's a lot of things. But one of the things that we were talking about was collective consciousness. And whether you think about that or believe that or not or whatnot, but collective consciousness is the theory that says that we actually share a consciousness that's collective between people, objects, animals. Everything shares this outside life force, that I guess you could say, or force. So maybe that's the collective consciousness where, there's things that can happen that can change it a little bit. So like, yeah, again, somehow it got imprinted and then it goes up into the consciousness. And then when you download that information to like replay that, maybe it comes back as fragmented the wrong way. And, you get this overlapping of Kazam, Shazam type situation. But I know we've talked about the collective consciousness before, but have you looked further into it since? And what's your thoughts then?
Well, what's interesting to me is the gorilla video. So spoilers out there because we're going to ruin this for a lot of people. You can be shown a video and yes, they'll tell you count how many times these people throw the basketball back and forth to each other, how many times it bounces. So you're focusing on the basketball, it bounces, you're like 1, 2. Now, the gorilla walks into the picture, he beats his chest in the middle of the frame and then walks off out of the video, and 99% of the people don't see the gorilla. And when you're watching this video, at the end of the video they say, okay, how many people counted the basketball? Oh, there were this many. And then what else did you see? Nobody saw anything. And they're like, did you see the gorilla? And people are like, what gorilla?
Oh, yeah.
And then you watch it over again. They make you watch it over again. And you go, oh my God, there's a gigantic gorilla that not only, it doesn't sneak in the picture, it casually walks, then it stops, it beats its chest. And then how the hell did I see that? Because your brain, the way that your brain filters your surroundings is your olfactory senses. It's crazy how your brain works. And it's your brain on any given moment is absorbing everything around you. It's absorbing the hearing, your sight, smells, but your brain is ignoring 99% of that stimuli and only processing what it thinks is the most important thing in your visual field. Most of the time it's your visual field or hearing, but you're not recording everything all at once. And it's very interesting how your brain works. I was just reading an article where your brain is dulling most of your senses at all times, which is how we function. But it's very interesting in that aspect. Now, when you talk about collective conscious, because I really was interested in biology, chemistry, psychology, which is backed up by math, I never put any thought into the way vibrational signals work. There's a lot of theories that we're sending out a vibration or a signal, or there's the law of attraction, there's collective consciousness. And to me,
you don't need to put it in quotes because these are actually things that are now trying to be tested.
Yeah, for sure.
Theorized and things. So it's not a saying or a thought.
Well, it is to
se,
me because to me, there's the physical world that's dictated by physics. It can be explained by math and physics, and that's what it is. So when you talk about, oh, if I put out positivity, then I'm going to get a bunch of good things back in my life. Well, that's not how it works. You're a victim of physics in reality. So whatever the physics are at the time, that's what's going to happen to you. So collective conscious is also, to me, I don't believe that I can close my eyes and send out some radio signal and there's this wealth of knowledge that all of a sudden I'm going to have all of the answers. So that's my personal opinion, but there's a lot of people who think that there's unlimited knowledge in the universe and that our bodies are a lightning rod to be able to download that unlimited answers or knowledge, which I don't believe in personally, but who knows? We don't know. We're learning new things every single day.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the whole thing. Like, nobody really knows what's the truth. And just because we can't see it doesn't mean it's not really there. It's just what we see is what we perceive. Right. But then it's the unseen and the unknown that, we know like a grain of sand of knowledge amongst the entire earth. Yeah. And that's like really how much knowledge we really actually know compared to the reality of everything. Right. So, I mean, until we can start like really gaining grasps on like the knowledge of the universe and just knowledge in general, anything can be up in the air. Right. I mean, especially when they're talking about simulation theory, when they're talking about multiverse theory, when they're talking about, infinite space and time theory. These are all theories that are backed up by different scientists and people who are trying to explore that avenue in the search of trying to find our place in the universe or our place in the world, as well as if we can break through the simulation.
Well, that's what's interesting to me. So Sean Carroll came out with a new book, and it's very interesting, it's one of his theories is about the multiverse, right? So the multiverse theory is that if I'm walking down the street, I decide to make a left turn at this road. Well, there's a me that also goes straight, and then there's a me that makes a right turn, and there's a me that was never on that road, right? But to me, it doesn't make sense to me because which person am I? Like, this feelings and the sight and the hearing that I have, which version? Am I the guy who went left? Am I the guy who went right?
Well, you're probably the guy who's actually what you've walked or the path that you've chosen, but the multiverse theory that says this is where, yes, there's a path that goes this way and that way. Well, it's very similar and very different. So, maybe a new universe happens infinitely at infinite amount of times at every decision that every single thing does and makes.
Yeah.
Or it's just saying that there's infinite amount of universes that are already. Some are very, very similar, which means they're leading you this pretty much the exact same life up until that decision where maybe you turn left, right, forward, backward,
for example,
or never there to begin with.
There's a guy who in one universe took a sip. In the other universe, I didn't take a sip. And then the other universe, I took a larger sip.
And then there's an infinite amount of other universes that are either
that's
you
the multiverse
sipping,
theory.
that are you here, that are you not here, that a lot of different things.
Yeah, that's the multiverse theory. So, Sean Carroll, I'm going to have to disagree with you. I respect you as being much more intelligent than me and much more knowledgeable in your field, which is astonishing. But I'm going to have to disagree with you on the multiverse. I don't think there's another version of me out there. I don't think that there's another version of me who did not just raise his hand. I think that we're trapped in this reality.
There is a version of you that just raised your hand because you just did.
Yeah, but there's not a version out there that's still sitting in this chair having the same conversation that didn't raise his hand. I think we're trapped in this physical reality right now. So, Sean Carroll, multiverse is great to think about. I really like thinking about it, and I enjoyed your podcast. I really enjoy your podcast, and I want to get your new book and read it, but I disagree with you. I don't think that there's a multiverse out there. I think we're trapped in this reality.
Well, you can have that, but you can't be closed. You can't be closed. You have to be able to say, I disagree, but there's always a possibility. And if you prove me right, I will gladly say I was wrong.
Oh, of course. And plus,
so as long as you can say that and do that, then that's good.
Well, what I really like Sean Carroll to do is explain to me the mathematics that he knows. Did you ever pay any attention to him? He's very intelligent, but he also knows physics, and I don't understand physics. So
I mean, here's the other big thing. These people study all of this stuff. And their wealth of knowledge it collectively is much more than your and my puny little brains in that subject.
For sure.
Where they might lack a lot of knowledge in another field where you might excel. Mm-hmm. But, I'm going to take each of their theories and say, well, that's plausible. Those are all plausible. And until we can amass more knowledge, we really can't make a decision yet on whether it's true or not. Because again, the fractional amount of knowledge that we really truly know compared to the realm of all knowledge is so small that it's not even, that it doesn't even register. Like I said, it's like a grain of sand compared to the rest of the world. And that could be even completely wrong, where it could be a grain of sand to the entire size of the solar system in terms of knowledge and trying to put it into like a visualization. So, I mean, when people bring up these theories, I like looking at them and I like thinking, hey, that's a cool theory, and I'd love to get more information on it from the person who's either presenting that theory, well, from a person who's backing up that theory, from a person who questions that theory. I'd like to get all the information and then say, okay, well, the validity of it is, it could be true. It's probably not. But until we actually have the more knowledge, we can't really say yes or no.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's exciting to me. And also, there's so much we don't know, but then there's so many in-depth things that we do know. And I wonder how they know all of the stuff that they know. Like if you look at so take DNA sequencing, for example. the science behind it is so crazy, and it's getting better all the time. How do they know? How do they know?
How do they know what?
How do they know how to do it? It's so crazy.
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing. Like, you can get certain information and then realize and follow the steps to either encode it or to figure it out or whatever it might be. So, yeah, I mean, we do have some knowledge, but I'm talking about in the grand realm of all knowledge, we know very little. And, you know, I always say everything's plausible unless it's absolutely impossible, which would mean, you know, like there's few things are actually law when it comes to scientific law, because that's just saying like the law of thermodynamics. Those are laws. It's unbreakable. Like, you can't break it down any further. You can't change it. It is what it is, and it's a law. Everything else is theory. History is theory, you know, and that's the whole thing where like history's changing right now, with a lot of different findings that we're finding. Like, we thought the ancient Egyptians were the prime civilization in the ancient world, but yet we're coming to find out that there's civilizations that happened thousands of years prior to that in different areas of the world, including South America, in the Amazon, where they're now able to do ground or tree penetrating groundwork to see where and how vast these cities actually are. You know, they found Göbekli Tepe in where is that? In, like, Turkey?
I don't know. I never paid any attention to it.
Where they found that, and that city was buried intentionally, you know, 13,000 years ago. So there's a lot of things that they're finding now that are disproving, and the whole theory started by saying, I think the Sphinx is much older. I'm putting that theory out there that says, I think the Sphinx is much older, and here is the reason why. I see weathering not from wind or sand, but from water. And so I see that, and then I see the distinct differences between the body and the face and how it was redone. And then, you know, let's look at the history of it, because it doesn't make sense. You know, you build something that's 4,500 years old, but 4,000 years, like 500 years after, you reface it because it had a problem and it hasn't been changed since. So like, that was kind of like somebody looking at something and questioning it and saying, okay, well, this doesn't make sense, and these things don't make sense. And then they look at it and say, okay, well, again, this looks like water weathering versus wind, and there hasn't been rain in that area or water in that area for 10,000 years or so. So they're saying, well, it predates that. And they're like Egyptian archaeologists are saying, nope, not at all. There's no way that's even possible. And then there's like, if you dive into the Sphinx more, there's tombs that are right there that they're not allowing anybody to go into. They don't know what's in them. They think that it's going to kind of unlock the secret of what the Sphinx really is, if it was really older, or if it was actually built during the Egyptian times when they say. There's so many different things, and that's the same thing. Like, history is so different from what we know, and there's going to be I think soon a very big change on what history is going to be, what we were taught, which may add to the Mandela effect too.
For sure. Well, that's why I love science, is because I think this happened, and the other person says, well, I think that happened. And I say, okay, well, we get our best tools, we do experiments, we see if we can repeat those experiments. And when something becomes a law, it's when there's no other possibility. This is the way it works. This is how it happens. We're to the best of our human brain's ability, this is how this phenomenon occurs. So, and it's really hard to prove something like that. And that's how you get these laws that are so few, is because it's hard to eliminate every other possibility and just say, yes, through repetition and through doing experiments over and over again in a million different ways, this is the only way that this phenomena can occur, and we're going to consider it a law from now on, like the law of gravity. But other things are subjective, and it's not an exact science. So if you always find new evidence, that's what I'm about. Show me some evidence that this occurred, this reason, show me evidence of that. And I think that people need to get back to that in our society, because there's so many people out there that just make opinions based on their own biases that are...
Oh my God, breaking news.
Yeah, that's
Breaking
exactly
news.
what's happened.
CNN said scientists discovered science.
Scientists discovered science. That was hilarious.
By the way, that was another card from Cards Against Humanity on Friday, which was hilarious. But no, yeah, I mean, what you were saying, it's really true.
And I'll give a perfect example, because if you've been listening to the podcast, we've been talking about the right to vape. And
Different segue.
yeah. So first of all, I personally believe this, no human being has the right to tell me what I could do with myself. You can tell me what I could do with other people, sure. Don't hurt other people, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have the right to tell me what I can do with my own body. And you can educate me and say, oh, if you take this substance, that will kill you. Okay?
Well,
I have the knowledge.
Hold on. That's a overstatement, I think, or overgeneralization. I want informed decisions.
Yeah.
So if you could say, oh, that could kill you. Well, getting in my car could kill me too. But yet we still do it every single day. So it's just a risk assessment of everything. And yeah, I agree. But I want to know, okay, I want to know everything about it. So I don't want to just know, oh, that could kill you. I want to know, does it have benefits? Does it have different things? So tell me everything, and tell me both sides, not just one.
So they teach you not to drink bleach because it will kill you, right? Well, I'm not going to drink bleach because it'll kill me. Give me the facts, right? I don't need to know that it's going to dissolve my organs and what effects bleach has on my internal body. I just know that if I drink it, I'm going to die. So I don't drink bleach.
I thought you said that bleach will cure your insides.
I never said such a thing, but there is a person that I talked to who seems to think, or there's the industrial bleach people. That is a whole nother conversation of why we need to get people back to science and knowledge and education. But going to vaping. So first of all, I don't believe other people have the right to tell me what I can do. That's just in general with substances that are in existence in the universe, right? So if I know the risks, I should be able to take that risk if I want to. If I'm of significant age to make an intelligent choice. However, there seems to be people who have control issues out there who want to control everything, or are doing it as a political stunt.
All politicians.
Yeah. So here's what happened. There's been some bad red rope licorice that's been going on out there. No. There's been some bad THC produced vape pens out there, which if you
is it the pen or the cartridge?
It was the cartridge first, and it may not be correlated. They haven't officially said yet, but if you've been keeping up on the news, the police busted some kids in like Wisconsin. They were making like thousands of THC cartridges a day. Mm-hmm. So first we have people getting sick from vaping and having some weird lung disease that they didn't know what it was from. And they're all of a sudden about a week or two later, then they bust these kids in Wisconsin who are making illegal THC vape cartridges. Now, they haven't officially said that these are correlated, but it's just an ironical coincidence that all of these people are going to the hospital from most of them vaping these black market THC cartridges. A few weeks later, they bust these 20-year-old kids that are mass producing these things in their basement or something, and it caused an epidemic, right? Well, because of this, there's people who are using it as political leverage to make them their own political candidacy popular, right? Or they're using it to scare the crap out of parents, and they just don't like people who vape. They're discriminatory against people who vape. So they're using it as a reason to try to assert their control over other people and make vaping illegal, which is what has happened in a lot of states, saying we're taking away your right to have flavor vape. Not just because of the kids, but you can't have blueberry vape now.
Well, what about the fact that it's an unregulated and untaxed market?
Yeah. So
That's
there's
the real question.
Yeah,
so
that's the whole factor.
Politically, vaping. Let's look at vaping in general. Vaping came out and changed the game for a lot of people who smoked. Instead of smoking cigarettes, they went to vaping because it was the quote unquote safer alternative. And you weren't getting the same chemicals if you were smoking. So a lot of people were saying, yeah, let's go to vape, which is, I guess a smarter decision. But what about the fact that now all of these states, all of these places that were taking tax money from all these cigarettes and putting it into whatever program they really wanted, and wherever it went, who knows, but they were losing out on money now because all of your tax base was starting to switch over to vaping, which was not regulated or taxed the same way as cigarettes were.
Right.
So when you peel back the money trail now,
Of course.
it makes a whole different story.
And that's the first issue with cigarettes. Now, not everyone faces those same ridiculous taxes. We live in New York State, where they're taxing an item more than what the item actually costs. And how this is allowed to happen in our... I can't believe people... Yeah.
Post the Tea Party.
Exactly. I've said this, I'm all for taxes. I understand what taxes are for, but they need to be equal. They need to be reasonable, and you can't prey on someone's addiction. They know that people are addicted. They're using that addiction to fatten their own pockets. That's a problem. So, again, all for taxes. Fund schools with taxes. Pave the roads with taxes. Provide programs for with taxes. Great.
Be transparent about the taxes too.
Be transparent about where that money is going. And I believe in 10%. This is just me personally. I believe in 10%. You get 10%. I work hard, take 10% of my fruits of my labor. Now that's not reality, but in the specific case of cigarettes, the taxes were twice as much as or more than the product even cost, which is just taking advantage of someone's addiction to fatten your own pockets for your own coffers. That's a whole other issue. So there's a lot of combinations of things of why. Then you've got the cigarette industry who doesn't want people to vape because they want them to buy cigarettes.
Want the money, yeah.
You've got people who are trying to take advantage of people's addiction to fatten their own pockets with taxes. You've got people who are using it as a platform for their own political gain and saying, oh, look at me, I'm doing something good. I'm saying we've got to stop children from vaping.
Smoke screen.
Well, everyone would agree with that. Nobody wants teenagers vaping. What are you stating here? But you're going to take away the rights of adults because you're for your own political gain. Oh, elect me, I'm doing something about teen vaping. So there's a lot of variables that happen here. And then these tainted black market THC vapes hit the market and were making people sick. So they busted those people. This is being used as leverage to say that we're gonna ban vaping. Well, proudly, I read an article where the doctors in the UK say, look, we're advocating vaping. We advocate that it's 95% better than smoking. We want people to, if they're trying to quit, switch over to vaping. And what America is doing with this banning vapes is crazy. It's insane. And people are just going to go back to smoking tobacco if they can't get their vapes, which is what ultimately I think that they're... What is the end game here?
Which means they're going to get their tax money again.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, and those teenagers are smoking cigarettes now. We need more money from taxes to stop teens from smoking. So it's all a horrible thing, but I was glad to see that there's some logical people in the world for these scientists or doctors from the UK. Now, the United States doctors made a statement that said, we don't think that vaping is good. And I think the key there is the beginning part of it.
We don't think.
Now, that's not medical science. That's not experiments. That's an opinion based on bias.
Yeah, that's subjective, not objective information.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. It's all emotionally based.
Exactly.
And one of the things, if you can take your emotions out of decisions, it's going to be a much different situation. Yeah. The one thing you can come down to, it's smoking, good or bad.
Of course, smoking's bad. We all know that.
And then you say, well, I'm addicted.
Yep.
And then how can I, what's addictive about it? Well, nicotine. Nicotine's the addictive substance.
Yep.
And okay, well, I can get my nicotine fix through vaping. Yes. No. Yes, I can. And then which one's the safer? Okay, vaping. And yeah, and that's the whole problem. It's like you have these pens, or I mean these cartridges that are tainted, but they're not giving you the full story of that because they're trying to get this agenda.
Yes.
And the question is, why are they doing that agenda?
Yes.
And what is, I mean, besides the fact that there's all these bans that are taking place now, you know, the craziest thing is it's like 6 people died. I mean, it's unfortunate that 6 people died because of this tainted, these tainted thing, or whatever.
But it's not
let's just say
vape,
in general.
Yeah, it's not from the vape juice that I get at my local vape shop, which is regulated. There's very high standards. They have quality control. It's just like anything else. When you go to the supermarket, the milk that you drink, the eggs that you buy, they all have a quality standard. They can't put out subpar products. And if they do put out subpar products, there's penalties, there's rules, there's regulations.
No, it's not regulated by the FDA in any way. And that's what they're talking about. Like, it's the same thing if you go to like a vitamin shop and you go and get vitamins. If you look at the bottom of it, it says this product has not been evaluated by the FDA. Yes, they can place standards and like the minimum guidelines that they strive for. So they can put that, but it's not regulated by a central agency.
Right.
And that's the skew. So they're saying it's not regulated by the FDA, but it could be better regulated by the companies individually or the third-party companies that are evaluating the product itself. So it could be a much safer product.
Right. And that's not what was poisoning people. What was poisoning people is not the vape shops who are producing a regulated product that they have to meet quality standards. They're people making these illegal THC cartridges in their basement.
Well, you can't say definitively that's the reason.
Right.
But
that's what it's looking like.
It looks like it's going to be.
So what it is, what was causing the people's illness was hydrogen cyanide that was in these vapes. So who knows how they got contaminated in there? But I'm not vaping that when I go to the vape shop that shows me the ingredients, shows me how it's made. That's how most vape shops that I've experienced are. You go at the ones at the mall, you know, the local store, they're produced they have quality. There's quality to them and there's no mystery chemicals. Now, that's a whole other issue, but I don't know how we got to a place in our country where people are run on emotions instead of logic. And why are other countries beating us in logic? I don't understand. What is causing this?
I have no idea. It's
emotional.
It's the same thing, and it's this cry outreach that everybody's like going for. It's like, and here's the thing. It's like if you can't. You know, if you disagree with somebody, it's like, oh, I have to go cry to somebody else about it and try to get change because I need them to follow the way and it's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like we can all live in a world where we have different opinions and different ideas and different thoughts and still be productive. But no, I agree in that aspect. It's like, why are we looking at how we feel or if it makes us feel bad or good or happy or sad? Why do we pay attention to why we feel instead of taking the emotion out of it and saying what is actually true, what is not true?
Right.
But the thing is, media finds that emotions are addictive. Facebook works on the addiction algorithm, what keeps people on scrolling longer and looking at things and gets people to engage more so they can exploit your information as well as your personality, but also what keeps you engaged on our platform longer so we can advertise more or take your information and give it back to our advertisers and do this full circle.
Yeah. And am I the only one that's immune to this stuff? I deleted my Facebook for that exact reason, is because of the toxicity. And I'm like, wait a minute, There's people on here that are just outraged. They're trying to spread outrage. It's bullshit. I don't want to have anything to do with your bullshit outrage. You're trying to scare other people with fake news. That's why I deleted my Facebook.
Well, I mean, the whole thing is if you can trigger Facebook's algorithm where it doesn't have to be this outrage culture that a lot of people are falling trapped to.
Yeah.
And, I'm going to revert back to the law of attraction here, because technically in this aspect, it's true because this is the algorithm. It's saying, so whatever you put out there, whatever keywords you're using or whatever you like, whatever you comment on, they track all that. And then they give you that same information back.
Yeah.
So let's say if you're like, fuck it, I'm going to start a Facebook page, but I don't want to or a Facebook profile, but I don't want to deal with this outrage news culture or anything like that. I want to use Facebook, to engage with my close friends on, stuff that they're posting that is not regarding, again, the outrage culture, and then I want to look at, say, travel posts. Or like review posts or stuff like that. Those are the type, and you start putting that out there like, oh, this review or this travel or this, that, and the other thing. Whatever you put out, whatever you engage with, that's what you're going to get back as well, too. So there is that catch. So you can get Facebook's algorithm to give you the information that you are actually looking for, but you have to put that information out first or engage with that information first.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have anything to do with the outrageness of it, because Facebook's algorithm works to get people engaged in outrage. And things like that, people get engaged in, and then they fall in this trap. And there's this whole Alice's hole that they go down.
Well, mine keeps suggesting local singles in my area.
Well, that's probably because you're looking up some porn.
No,
But
which is a whole nother topic. This is why I deleted my Facebook. I had a friend. What it was good for me was people's birthdays.
Yeah.
Or there's a local party going on, like, oh, we're getting together for this reunion. Okay, great. That's what Facebook was good for me. But there were 3 different people on my Facebook, and I prided myself on having the least amount of people as possible on my Facebook as my friends. You had to be my close friend that I associated with on a regular basis to be a friend on Facebook. Whereas I think other people were doing the exact opposite.
yeah,
like,
they're
I can't wait.
They're like, oh, I want to. Oh, you look fun. Click, 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 click.
Like, I have 17 million friends. I'll never talk to or meet. So I prided myself on, if you were on my Facebook, I personally knew you and we had interacted recently. But I had a couple people where one friend of mine was the type of person who would get involved in this cult that drinks industrial bleach because she would think that she had sent me a post that we talked about before where she wanted me to eat sulfur and just eat these heaping globs of sulfur. Well, I have a pretty good bullshit detector, or I at least want to know where this stuff is coming from. So with the sulfur guy, I looked him up. He just bought like metric tons full of sulfur at a very discount price and wanted to sell the sulfur. Had no scientific research behind it. Turned out he was a photographer who was
It's kind of like the pet rock.
right. It was exactly so. Like, okay, who is making these claims? So then I had another. So that was the one. She wanted me to. This guy is pushing the sulfur. You can look him up. And I'm like, okay, this guy's full of shit. He just bought a bunch of sulfur and now wants you to buy his sulfur, right? Discount sulfur, get it from me. It's good for you. So then she posted another one where don't drink homogenized milk. You need to drink raw milk.
Well, there's actually some thought
There
behind
is.
that, because milk itself isn't good for you.
Well, no,
we're the only species.
No, that is not true. That is not true.
We're the only species
Incorrect.
in the world that drinks milk beyond.
Incorrect.
Name any other
So
animal.
first of all, we are the only animal that drives cars. We're the only animal that lives inside of houses. Those animals would definitely drink milk if they could. They can't. Also, there are certain people who have lactose intolerance because of their genetics. They can't drink milk. But other than that, milk is fine for people.
Milk's
There's nothing
fine
wrong
for
with
people,
milk.
but It's not something you have to drink.
No.
It doesn't provide any nutrients beyond the mother and the child if that's how if you're breastfeeding. Beyond breastfeeding stage, there's no reason to drink milk. And in today's day and age, in America at least, other parts of the world it's different because they have different.
There's no
but
reason to eat cheese
they
puffs
put
either,
a
but they're
lot
delicious.
But they put a lot of sugar in the milk now.
Now that's
And
something that I
the
have
problem.
to look into. Yeah, I'll definitely.
So
have
they
to look into
They
that.
actually doubled the sugar, the additional sugar that they put into the milk recently. So then you drink more milk.
Right. Well, she had posted this post from this fake doctor who called himself a doctor but wasn't a doctor.
Was he a guru?
He claimed to be Dr. Guru, I think was his name. So she posted this post
Strange.
where don't drink homogenized milk because it's burned and it's causing leaky gut syndrome, where if you drink the milk, you're going to get leaky gut. I'm like, okay, that's not how it works, but this fake doctor on the internet said it, so that must be right. So then I start researching this guy. This guy had killed 2 different people because he thought that injecting bovine blood into them was going to make them stronger or something. And they caught diseases because bovines have diseases that humans don't have. They got disease and died. That guy had killed 2 different people with his bovine miracle cure. Nobody mentions that, and I don't know why this guy is still on the internet saying don't drink homogenized milk because it's burned and it causes leaky guts. So I'm like, okay, I can't take this.
It's funny though, because there's a lot of people out there that have done really shady shit beforehand, and they're still in the same realm of things.
Yeah.
But people follow the shit out of them.
Follow them.
And one of the big ones is L. Ron Hubbard.
Oh my God.
Like that guy
Yeah.
is crazy. Like with the shit that he's pulled like before the whole Scientology thing.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden now Scientology was this big
And
majestic
they're
thing.
so
that,
involved in it. And that's what my whole issue is. Like, how do people not have independent thought that like this is bullshit? Like this is bullshit.
It's going to come down to one thing and one thing probably alone, and that's most people follow
They do.
versus leader. I mean, if you had all leaders, there wouldn't be anybody to follow. So like there's only like again it's like almost like this natural rule
Yeah, it's
that
so
happens
weird.
that like everybody just falls into. It's like there's born leaders
Yeah.
and then there's born followers, and most of the population is a follower who doesn't question anything and they just live their life nonchalant. But there's other people out there who will start questioning things, whether they're followers or leaders, it doesn't matter. But even if they're followers, they'll question things, and you question things too, because it's like, well, why do we do these things? I want to know the answers to it.
Yeah, show me.
And that, yeah, I mean, that's the one way you're looking, and then I question it in a different way.
Well, again, I have such a weird view on society. Again, because I love biology and I love chemistry, to me, we are organisms on the planet Earth that are in an environment with other organisms. So when I see human beings, to me, we all have individual skills that we should all be working together to provide the best quality of life for everyone that we can, right?
Yeah,
there
but
isn't.
we don't do that.
We don't. We definitely don't,
And-
because of what you just said, because of that need for someone to have the leader, this person to look to for guidance, or they're just subconsciously following along. I observed this today when I was out for breakfast.
And that's the whole thing. It's the leaders that are that are leading who are flawed, because either they're looking for power, either they're looking for control, either they're looking maybe for both. There's a lot of different things there that leaders are, but there are good leaders out there who are looking to better society and better things. And if these people can gain the proper steam and the proper followings, but the thing is, not one person or not a group of people, or even if you included all of the leaders, have all of the answers. Like
Right.
they can be flawed in many different areas, or not skilled in many areas, and their expertise isn't there. So like, you could have a leader. Okay, so the biggest thing right now is climate change. Everybody's talking about climate change. So you have some leaders who are denying climate change is happening. You have some leaders that also are saying that the end of the world is going to happen in 10 years. And you have a varying degree in between.
Right.
So you have these two extremes and then everybody in between that, because that's the line. So the question is, where on the line is actuality? And is this then it's very complex, because is it a political issue? Is it because, what's your end goal here as a leader? Why are you following? Why do you think this? Why are you acting like this? Why are you saying that the world is going to end in 10 years? Why are you saying that we hit this critical juncture, that we've passed this critical juncture and we've already lost it? And then why are you saying that, well, we really don't know what's going on, but we know that the climate shifts, we just don't know where we are. So you have all these different things, and it's like, well, why are you saying this? What is your end game? What is your goal out of all this? Are you trying to do this for publicity? Are you trying to do this because you think it's the best?
Right.
Or are you doing this because you truly researched things and understand? But here's the thing. Most politicians, they don't know because they've never actually researched it.
They don't do
They
anything.
may have talked about it with certain people who may have done the research. They also may have done, something that everybody does, and that's, let's look at Twitter and see what the Twitter
that's
world
what
says.
the issue is. And the issue is when you try to say, well, tell me when the planet is doomed. There's so many variables that you could never give a time frame and say, okay, all we can do is observe what's happening. Now, the biggest defense to there's no such thing as global warming happening, and I hear this all the time from people.
No, it's not global warming anymore. It's climate change.
Yeah. Well, I hear it's a good term, because climate. What I hear is that, well, the Earth has been fluctuating up and down for hundreds of years and thousands of years.
Let's talk
There's
normal.
been a natural this and a natural that.
Let's talk normal.
Well, that's what I hear. First of all, you don't tell me what to do. I'll talk however the hell I want.
Yeah, but we're
Second
not
of all,
generalizing.
all right. So, but what I hear is, well, this happened and that happened. And I was, okay. First of all I go by is what the scientists are actually observing, right? Because that's all with science. Science doesn't make opinions and doesn't make judgments. They just
the math.
observe, right?
Science.
So here's what's happening.
Scientists can, but the flawed science.
They make a hypothesis, but then you
Yeah,
make
but I'm saying the results can be flawed. But
Well, we talked
if
about
you're
that's
if
fraud.
you're talking about math, yeah, but here's the thing: you could also be doing the tests
sure.
in a flawed manner and getting,
sure.
but you're under the belief that it's the
Yeah,
actual
for
truth.
sure.
So
Yeah.
that's the whole thing.
Yeah. Science is not an exact science.
And that's the whole thing of checking and rechecking and publishing so people
And that,
can
sir, is
verify.
the scientific method.
And that's the thing behind it. So but unfortunately, in today's era, because there's a lot of money that needs to be involved in these tests and that, you don't have that verification and the recheck and the recheck.
Exactly.
So that's the whole thing where
that's
are
what we
we
got
getting
away from.
real results
Right.
or are we getting flawed results?
Right.
And we're only looking at maybe one or two studies when we should be looking at more and more.
So I've heard the same thing. It's like, oh, there's been the ice age, and then there's been the heat age, and then I'm like, okay, what we do know is that the Earth's temperature is heating up exponentially faster than it ever did. That's one thing, right? So you can say, yeah, well, it was hotter at this time and it was colder at that time. Yeah, but that took thousands of years. So right now, when you look at the measured heat of the Earth, it's changing in an exponential fashion. That's what the problem is. It's not because it's getting warmer or cooler. It's because it's exponentially
I would
changing.
not use the term exponential, because exponential goes 2 to 4 to 8 to 16
Well,
to
it seems
32.
to be what's happening. So
But you can't say that because it's a nominal change. But the thing is, the rate of change, I would use this terminology because it's probably more accurate, that the rate of change is increasing now more than ever before.
right, but it
Not
seems so far
exponential.
it seems to be exponential. However, if the rate of change slows down, you're correct. If it's only whatever. So that's the first thing that I hear is, well, there's always been fluctuations. Well, in fact that the Earth is heating up quicker and much, much faster than it ever has before. However, there's tons of other research. There's the coral bleaching in the oceans. There's the temperature of the oceans. There's the melting of the ice caps. There's all sorts. There's the volume. There's the hole in the ozone layer. There's so much evidence.
Yeah, but hold on. The ozone layer is actually almost healed itself.
It's
too.
repaired itself since
So
we've
it's
taken positive.
very substantial. Yeah.
So that's what we need to do during climate change
But-
now. We need to start taking action.
But then here's the other question. Besides that, yes, we have this planet called Earth, but we're also part of a larger celestial being or celestial objects, which now we can include the sun, we can include different areas. And you got to look at also the cyclical reigns of time in terms of the galaxy, where we are, and the heat signatures beyond that too. Because, here's the one thing. The sun is about at its half-life right now. The sun is getting brighter and hotter. And what effect is the sun putting onto the earth in terms of heat as well too? Mm-hmm. So is it just us, or is it the sun itself that's also adding to this?
No, because that reaction is so slow. And you're right. The sun will eventually burn the earth.
But the thing is, it is adding to that point
takes
already.
Hundreds of thousands of years before there's a measurable change. And that's the whole point. It's like these things have always happened.
But that's the thing. We don't know. We're like I said, we're in this area where we, like, if you ever look at a graph, you see the graph and then you see this little area that, like, it would just be the end of the graph. Well, you have all the actual data points, but then you have right here, and it's like the lines, because it's the processing point of all this stuff that's being processed. So it's like, yes, the rate of change is happening the quickest, but is it just us, or is it other things involved too besides
it's humans?
But but the thing is, we don't know that.
Yes, we do. This is what I've been trying to tell everybody who's like, no, the climate change isn't real. Yes, we know that it's real. We have all the proof. There's all of the evidence. Hundreds of thousands of people around the world who study each individual thing are all saying the same thing. You can't deny it. They all have the data. Go look up the data. It's undeniable. And people, the only question now is how are we going to take action?
There can be other factors that we don't know or we don't see because they're not taking into account.
There isn't.
Could be playing into the effect.
No, there's not.
You don't know that.
Yes, we do.
You don't know that.
Yes, we do.
You can't
what
say...
What factor? Tell me what. You mean the solar winds? The solar winds are causing climate change? It's the rapid expansion of the sun that's causing.
Instead of being so close-minded,
you're the one who's being closed-minded because you're not accepting scientists' data.
I didn't say that I was denying climate change. I'm saying, what if there are other factors out there that we are not sure of yet?
Yeah, you're not accepting responsibility that human beings are causing climate change.
No,
we have to accept responsibility
seriously not,
for that.
You're not listening to what I'm saying. You're so closed-minded.
No,
right
I am
now.
not closed-minded. I'm not going to listen to you call me closed-minded.
I'm telling you, you're closed-minded.
You're definitely not making an incorrect judgment, and I'm not going to tolerate it.
Well, guess what? I'm making that judgment.
I'm the closed-minded one because I investigate and learn about climate change.
I'm saying that's good, but I'm saying, what if there's other factors that we haven't figured out yet?
What are they?
Obviously, if we haven't figured out yet, how would I know if I'm not the scientist who's looking at things? I don't have the answer. What I'm saying is, what if there are other things that are unforeseen that we don't know about yet? Again, we don't know them, that are playing into everything in terms of climate change and the shifting climate from where we were to it getting hotter and hotter. Yes, humans obviously do have a play in it, but the question is, are we able to truly curb our impact on the earth, or is it some other factors that if we change our impact on the earth to do maybe a net zero, and I don't mean a carbon emission zero, I mean like a net zero, including methane and all these other greenhouse gases that would warm the earth. would that have a negligible impact, or would that have a real impact? Because there could be outside forces that are also heating the earth up that we don't know about yet.
See, every person I talk to has some kind of weird angle to deny that human beings are affecting the earth. It's some mitigating circumstance we don't know about. Oh, climate change. It's China. It's China propaganda. Human beings are causing climate change.
Where did I say in that entire thing that humans are not causing it?
You just said there's some mitigating circumstance that we don't understand.
That is not what I said.
Maybe human beings can change, but there's some mitigating circumstance. No, there is no mitigating circumstance.
I said.
That's exactly what
that
you
is
said.
not what I said.
We can replay the recording.
We will replay the recording when we go off.
It's so hilarious to me.
Actually, hold on. Let me get the timestamp. It's 1:23:58 right now.
It's so
we're
hilarious.
going to replay it, where what I said again was, yes, humans are changing the climate with what we're doing, but if we changed what we were doing and had a net zero impact, the question then becomes, would we have an impact change? Would it be negligible, or would it be a real impact? Because there could be unforeseen circumstances that we don't know about yet. That's the real question, and you can't say there isn't.
I can say that. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Nobody knows.
Yes, we do. Scientists know. There is no other mitigating circumstance. There's no imaginary solar wind that's heating up the planet. There's no expanding sun that's expanding so fast it's heating up the planet.
Nobody said that it was
human
expanding.
Beings. It's humans. There's no other mitigating circumstance. It's not the core of the earth heating up. There's nothing. It's human beings. So all we have to do is be conscious and just make some life changes, really. So I'm a hypocrite myself because I have a lot of technology in my life. I drive a car, and I don't even think that switching to, like, let's say hydrogen seems like it would be the way to go planet-wise because the byproduct is water.
Well, it's water and something else, right?
It's just water.
No, I think it's hydrogen. Yeah, no, you're right. Water.
Yeah.
Water and oxygen, actually. Yeah. That's it, oxygen.
Well, so there's a couple different ways to do it too. Or there's a big push for electric, which I'm not on board with because that energy has to come from somewhere. And also another person made a real good point that those batteries on those cars have a lot of chemicals in them and they have to go somewhere. Are we going to recycle every battery in the cars? That's another good point.
Here's the thing when it comes to, I agree with you on that. I mean, electric vehicles are not
where is the hydrogen they promised us?
Hold on. Electrical vehicles are not at the point where they are going to be any better or any less emission based, or however you want to term, as its gas counterpart, because of all the things that go into it. The rare earth elements, the different chemical, the makeup, all this stuff that has to go into the batteries, or that has to go into the technology itself. But if we were able to if we were able to recycle everything, and that's the other thing too, is like, there's a lot of things that we can recycle that we don't. And the question is why? And it's all chemicals. Like, if you get down to the molecular structure, it's all a molecule. And the question is, how do we change the molecule into something we could use again and again and again and again?
Yeah. Well,
and that's the whole thing I never understood is, like, they say, okay, so plastic bottles, they say, oh, there's so much plastic bottle waste that some of it gets recycled, but a lot of it just gets thrown away. Well, why can't we use this plastic bottle and create it into something new?
They do.
That we can, but not the 100%.
No, they don't. So that's the problem.
That's the issue.
There's like 7 different types of plastic. One of them is recyclable. That one may not be. You should look on it and see whether it has the deposit on it.
No, this one is. I mean, water bottle, for the most part, all water bottles like this are.
It depends on the number that's on them, that's stamped on them, like 5 or 6. That one should have a number stamped on it. Mm-hmm. So, and it depends on the chemicals that are used to make the plastic, and they melt them down. They'll turn it into new plastic bottles, but that does take energy. There's only a couple plastics that are recyclable in that way, and there's a lot of problems with it. But scientists have come out with new plastic that can be broken down.
It's called hemp plastic.
Well, that's probably another one, but scientists have finally figured out how to truly recycle
Like,
plastic.
you mean biodegrade, right?
Well, to where they can reheat up the actual molecules of the plastic to reform it without it losing its consistency. Because every time there's a chemical change, a lot of things don't go back to the way that they were. So scientists have to find a way to use certain processes to be able to break down the molecules into their original components to reuse them in an efficient fashion. We have lots of people who are working on that.
I think that has to be one of our top priorities because there's so much waste that but the thing is, all of the waste that we give or have between us, between animals, between, just our planet with the waste, we should be able to come up with different uses and different things for those different things.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, biodegradable waste is one thing because it already has this recyclable aspect to it where it means our waste goes to the earth, which then plants and fungus grow and break down, and then fruit and vegetation grows on top of that, which goes to, and there's that's cyclical. It goes from one form to the next. But our actual waste, whether it be plastic bottles, cell phones, wood, whatever it might be, all of these things should be able to be reclaimed over and over and over again with the induction of chemicals and molecules that will change them into things that we can reuse. And
that's the whole challenge. And what's interesting to me is that when I drive around, I see big garbage pickup. All the people are putting out all their stuff. So someone is taking that garbage. There's a lot of industrial waste that has been dumped into who knows where to produce those products. I think of tables, televisions, chairs with plastic pleather. People, not only there's a lot of waste that was used to make those things. And back even years ago, there was even less restriction. We're like, oh, we'll just dump all those chemicals in the ocean. Who cares?
Yeah.
Buried into the ground. Where I live, there's tons of chemicals that are buried all over the place that they find all over the place. So,
well, like Lovejoy is one of,
Love Canal is one of them.
Yeah.
But where I live, there was a plant where they found a bunch of chemicals when they're building new housing developments. They're just barrels that was nothing left in the barrel because the chemicals leaked out of it. Yep. And it's like they didn't mark where they were burying any of these things. Nobody cared. Well, now there's more strict rules, but we're still producing a ton of waste, industrial waste, and then household waste, right? So I just think we could all do a much better job of using everything. Why can't we use everything?
But not only that, though, there's also different restrictions when it comes to industrial waste and residential waste.
Yep.
So you could say that one is more than the other while one is also less than the other.
Who knows? Yeah.
So like industrial waste has different regulations that are more stringent and less stringent as its residential counterpart.
Right.
So it's a real unique situation.
So it always, in my mind, because I just imagine things that is not reality, but if we could, and there have been people in history who have done this, but in my mind, when I see the big garbage pickup, I don't understand why when they pick up these tables and golf clubs and chairs, why it's not taken to somewhere where they're like completely deconstructed and reused.
Oh,
like
I agree with you right
stuff.
there.
But the reason is because nobody's going to pay for people to do that.
Which
someone would have to physically sort through all that stuff. Who's going to pay for that?
Yeah, but it doesn't make sense
I know.
on the reason why you wouldn't do that, because you could probably, like in the grand scheme of the whole aspect, save more money, because here's the thing. You have somebody who's going through the garbage and sorting out, or you have machines that sort out the garbage and, put it in different aspects and
gives
avenues.
People jobs, adds to our economy.
Well, not only that, but here's the thing. You have that job, or you have somebody who goes out, cuts down the trees, logs the trees, ships them out, planes them. So you have all this different thing. And it's like, wait, well, you can break down that used wood and make it into particle board. You can break down that used wood, make it into MDF. You could break down you could do a lot of different things with that wood. You could even use it for like fire, for heat, for people who need it. Yeah. So there's a lot of different uses for it. And, one of the big things too, though, is we always have to have, we're always going to use energy. Mm-hmm. Like there's always going to be a use of energy. It's how we can use our energy and then repurpose it after it's been expended in terms of waste product. But we're always, once we've already, we're not going to give up electricity. Like we're not going to do it. We're not going to give up our heat. We're not going to give up our air conditioning. We're not going to go backwards because we've already encompassed these luxuries. The question is, how can we do it in a sustainable way that's going to be little to zero or maybe even a negative impact on the earth itself?
Right.
And, that's why don't people just start looking at that way? Because overall, you're probably going to save more money in the long term and through the entire chain from product or from trash to new product than you are from resource to product. Because now you're creating a new product, but you're using a resource, which means now you're dwindling. Let's say carbon dioxide is eaten and changed by two things, really: the ocean and the trees. They use it and they give off oxygen. So there's a cycle. But the question is, what can we do to change things to get it to a proper level? And then what if we can pull atoms out of the air and let's say carbon dioxide, and use it for something, or transfer it for something, and do all these different things?
Well, that's what people aren't thinking about, is okay, I can have something quick and convenient right now, but maybe it'll cause someone to have cancer or something, who knows, because of the pollutants in the world.
Oh, but that's okay.
Yeah, but I'm not going to get cancer. Well, how do you know you're not going to get cancer? Or whatever it is. There's tons of health problems associated with pollution, and we really don't need them. But then we need the microphone that we're talking on. We need the headphones that we're listening on. We need the cars that we drive around in. We need the shelter. We need all this stuff. Well, the question is, and that's why I'm I'm guilty of being part of climate change. So we just all have to be more conscious. It was I can do without certain things. And the solution, I wonder what it was like before the Industrial Revolution. How was the air clean? Was the water clean before the Industrial Revolution? We're driving a horse-drawn cart, but are we healthy?
Maybe.
All we have to worry about is the plague.
Right now, though, one of the big things is we face an obesity epidemic because all of the things around us are here to make our lives easier. We're able to see at night. We're able to have refrigeration. We're able to have air conditioning so we can live in areas that we weren't able to live in before. Yep. We have portable water bottles. We have, did you hear the article that came out that said they think that unfiltered tap water could lead to 100,000 cases of cancer a year because in a lifetime, because the chemicals that are in the water. Did you see that article?
No.
Yeah,
but it would make perfect sense.
So that's an article I just saw. I didn't read into it, but it was on CBS News recently. So yeah, that was a pretty interesting article on why, one, you should filter your water, just because you don't know what could be in it. And yeah, we all say we should not be drinking bottled water, but I also take mine back to the recycling bin instead of throwing it out, because hey, if I got to spend 5 cents, that's going to be an issue. But yeah, so there's certain things that you can do, like lower your air conditioning, raise your air conditioning to a higher temperature, or lower your heat down to a lower temperature and wear a hoodie in the winter.
Right.
And
It's
there's
just
certain
things that
things
you
you
wouldn't
can
even
do.
think of. Like this table, who knows what kind of pollutants were put into the earth to make the gloss on the table. You know what I mean? Like, this might be biodegradable. I don't know. I don't know what you know. What did you use for this? Like,
It's polyurethane.
well, how is polyurethane made? Is there a byproduct? Is it industrial waste? What happens to that? It's everything around us. We just have to be more conscious. But look, we got plastic on this, metal on that. These things are all made, and that's what's causing the most pollution. It's not what me and you are doing.
No.
It's industrial.
But all right, well, what do you
So
think
am I going to
about
use
the-
a bamboo? You know, and then you're
Well-
like, oh, the rainforest. We got to just be more conscious.
Yeah, but what do you think about the whole let's tax cows and let's tax meat to fight global war or to fight climate change? What's your thoughts on that one?
I'd have
on
to
that
do
brilliant
more,
idea.
yeah, well, I'd have to do more research into it, but again, taxes.
We're gonna tax. I'll give you the simplest breakdown of it, and tell me your thoughts on a overgeneralized or an oversimplified thought. So let's tax the cows because they create cow farts, and there's so much methane coming from farmers or from farmed animals, and let's put a tax on beef. So then it will stop us from eating beef. And that's essentially what it is.
People are going to eat beef. Who's the corrupt person that's trying to get money out of it? You always have to look for where the corruption is.
There's a
So
lot.
I'm sure there's
quite a
someone
few.
who stands to make a lot of money by passing this law.
Oh yeah, there's quite a few candidates that are actually talking about that on
Mm-hmm.
the campaign trail right now.
Well, I was very interested to learn that it's not cow farts that is causing the problem. It's cow burps. I didn't know that. Cows regurgitate methane. It is a problem. It doesn't sound like it would be a problem, but it's a problem. It does contribute to global warming. Cows regurgitating methane. So what we have to do is it's really simple. We just need to take a mask with a tube and put it over the cow's face, and then they regurgitate the methane into a tube, and we can use that to fuel our cars. I don't see these are just obvious solutions. I can't believe
but you're
people
going to
are-
also have a lot of people who are saying we can't do that because they need to breathe in the fresh air. Why are we going to put masks on them? What if they have to eat?
Well, they have
How are
little
they going to
breathing
be able
holes.
to eat?
Well, we'll give them eating breaks. See, these are simple solutions. We can solve global warming or climate change. Now, they're complicated solutions that need to be made. I read that there's a form of kelp that can absorb that methane. Mm-hmm. It's
I
very.
heard that too.
Yeah, so it's like science. I've always believed science, technology, and engineering can solve all problems.
Yeah, but the
we're
only
so
problem with
busy
that-
doing other things.
No, it can solve things, but we might not have the technology for it yet because it's undiscovered. I mean, prime example would be, say, Iron Man. You've watched Iron Man, correct?
Yep.
You see,
I'm limited
1
by
and
the
2?
technology of my time.
Yeah, but did you see Iron Man 1 and 2?
Yes.
Okay, so you know how like the core was a palladium core,
Yeah.
and it like had a problem with Stark, and he had like all this
Yeah.
this toxicity.
Yeah.
And he's like, and then his dad, yeah, you're right. You just said the quote where I'm limited by the technology of my time, but he had the ability and the foresight to come up with this new element,
Right.
and they never really said what the element was, but he put it in this form, and he knew that down the road the technology would be caught up to the point where now you could synthesize that molecule or that element, and obviously it's a fantasy character world.
Well, then where are my watered power cars that they promised us?
I don't know. That was interesting though. That they've had that, and then where did they go? And that's the whole. Again, it comes down to the whole thing. It's like the power struggle and the power compilations between everything. It says, okay, well, you're taking on the gas and oil industry, and this is water, which is plentiful. But here's the thing: can it run on saline water, which would be from the oceans, or does it have to be fresh water?
It's hydrogen. So you take hydrogen, you use electrolysis to make water, or you can use electrolysis to split water and produce hydrogen and oxygen. So
Yes,
the reverse way is using liquid hydrogen to create the byproduct of water, right? And so the problem is there's a couple problems with hydrogen. We have the technology. The problem is storage.
And
So-
infrastructure.
Well, infrastructure, but you can build that out. But when you take liquid hydrogen, it's hard to store in a tank. So we have to have better storage technology to be able to store that liquid hydrogen in a tank. The big fear was that with people like, oh my God, the Hindenburg, everything's
Yeah.
going to blow up. Well, first of all, we're driving around vehicles that have compressed gasoline. When you get into
Which
a
is
crash, the gas leak
Highly flammable as
yeah,
well.
which I have a video of a woman who crashed her car, and her car could have very well blew up. Was leaking gasoline. It's one of the proud moments of my life, is saving a girl who crashed her car.
did the car ever blow up or no?
No,
Okay, that's
did
good.
not. We got her out of the car, but the gas was leaking. She broke her gas tank.
Yeah, I remember you saying that. You
So,
punctured the tank.
That's
and it
one
was
of the
pouring.
problems with hydrogen is storage, right? And then people were afraid, well, if you crash your car, it's gonna blow up. Or like in Terminator when he takes out his hydrogen thing and throws it and it blows up. That's not what
It's
happened.
not. Yeah, it's not the same thing.
Yeah, and you crash your hydrogen is in a tank. If they can get the technology right to be able to store the hydrogen for transport, that's one problem. And the other problem is, you're right, infrastructure, but we're so addicted to fuel, and that's the easiest thing that we have right now. That's what the problem is. So
But there is the transition to electric vehicle, which, yes, we did talk about its drawbacks, but it also does have some positive sides, which means you're not relying, you yourself aren't relying on gas in order, when you're talking about like a Tesla or an all EV vehicle, or an all-electric vehicle, where it doesn't use like a hybrid model like a Prius or something.
Right.
You're talking about pure electricity, which you could get solar panels for your house,
Right.
and then charge your vehicle that way. You could have a battery, which you take the sun, because obviously most of the time when we're charging our batteries, it would be at night when we're sleeping, when there's no sun.
Right.
But we can put things in place like solar panels with batteries the battery can charge the other battery up.
Right.
And there's
that's
different things
a great
that
step
way.
in the right direction, but I don't think for solar, I don't think you can produce enough electricity to charge your car efficiently, right?
Yeah, you just have to have the proper amount of panels.
Right.
And then it also has to do with the orientation, like with your house, and there's a lot of different factors when it comes to it.
It's a great step in the right direction, but the batteries, again, was a great point. Like the batteries in those things, who knows? Like there's a ton of chemicals in those. What's going to happen to those? They're going to end up in a landfill, and that's that. But electric is a step in the right direction. But if you think, well, a lot of people are getting power from burning coal or burning natural fossil fuels from a power plant or a nuclear energy, right? So to me,
Nuclear, though, is actually very good compared to, coal power, or, there's a lot more benefits to going in a nuclear power
I disagree.
versus, well, you should talk to some scientists then.
yeah, well, I completely disagree. Okay, here's my thing. Coal. When you burn coal, it's dirty. It's pollutant. That's what China has a huge problem with. Just people use coal to heat their houses. It causes pollution. It's dirty, right? Well, nuclear waste lasts for hundreds of thousands of years.
Yeah, for
Like,
sure.
what are you going to do with it? Like coal is dirty. Nuclear waste is 10 times worse.
Well,
what are you going to do with all the nuclear waste?
Why do you think that why do you think SpaceX is happening? We're going to ship it off into Venus.
Oh, great.
And then we're going to crush it on Venus where
Yeah.
there's no big deal.
Perfect. To shoot it right into the sun so it flies right back to us. That is a solution, but it's just, I mean, everyone's like, oh, nuclear is okay, well, we've got 3 Mile Island, we've got Chernobyl, we've got Fukushima, and then those are just horrible accidents. What about all of the nuclear byproducts over all of these plants? What are you going to do with all that stuff? It's like, I think, antiquated technologies.
I'm waiting for the fusion reactor
Well,
to come out.
that would
Once
be
that
great.
happens, then we're all set.
Well, there's a new molten salt molten salt reactor that looks promising. Fusion looks promising. But, I mean, we've got to figure out how to harness the sun. There's more energy that hits the Earth from the sun in just a cubic, centimeter.
Well, there's more energy that hits from the sun that hits the Earth in 8 minutes that we could use for the entire planet for the year.
Right, yeah.
I think that's the statistic. But we can also use geothermal.
There's no
tidal
need.
power.
Yeah.
We can use. There's so much ways that we can create power. But here's the thing: it's most of it's electricity.
Yeah.
Heat geothermal is a good thing for heat and air conditioning.
Yeah.
Where we don't have to use the power the same way. We can use different heat pumps and things along that nature. So geothermal is a promising thing, but the problem is the cost.
That's always it.
Doing these tunnels and that.
Yeah, that's
is
always
quite a substantial amount.
It's so much easier just to burn coal, or you get so much energy out of nuclear power that the benefit to nuclear energy, because it's power packed. But then what are you going to do with that?
I told you we're going to ship
nuclear
it to Venus.
Well, right now it's buried in the ground and it's leaking into the groundwater. So if it lasts, this has a half-life of 100,000 years. So.
Well, it's actually not really in the ground. That's conspiracy.
Is.
We think it's in the ground, but it's actually been shot to the moon because we go to the moon all the time. Yeah. We just don't tell anybody about it.
Makes perfect sense. And you know what? I'd have to look this up, but it makes perfect sense to me to shoot it all in the moon. Shoot all the garbage out in outer space. Why aren't we shooting garbage into outer space? There's a reason why, and we'd have to look it up.
Well,
but it's a good reason why they don't.
If it comes down, it'll just burn up in the atmosphere.
Just shoot it across the universe.
Incinerated.
Yeah.
Let's get Guardians of the Galaxy and space warp it to wherever.
I'll tell you why we can't do that. It's perfectly logical. We can't send our waste to outer space. Not even a little bit. Because if we do that, then the Earth will not weigh the same that it weighed before, and it will become off of its axis and lopsided, and then we'll go out of our orbit, and then that's it. Then we'll crash into the sun. That's why.
To a point. Yeah. Actually, no, we wouldn't go off course. It would course correct. So depending on the size of a planet and its velocity would be how far away from its orbiting star it actually is. So if we ejaculated a lot of mass off of the Earth, it would course correct itself and fall into a new orbit.
No, we definitely crash into the sun for sure. It's like when you drive with a flat tire. Boop, 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 all of a sudden veer right into the sun. That's why we can't do it. And it's all scientific. I've measured it out and everything. Now, there's a reason why they don't send...
Because it costs too much. That's essentially
that was the original reason, but there's a reason why they don't have it in outer space. I can't remember why. I'd have to look it up.
Well, I think it's also the fact that they have the space articles or whatever the hell they're called, which is actually the or like the Accords of Space or space traveler, like whatever it is, and it's the fact that they actually say that you can't bring your trash into space. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So there's like it's our world, it's our problem.
The international agreement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I believe, I don't know what it's, I'd have to look it up, but I believe there's an article in there, or some article of space that talks about that, when it talks about space trash.
It's just a lot of things like.
Although, what about all of the satellites and everything, especially the ones that aren't working anymore? Right. What about all of those? Because technically that is space trash.
Yes, it's definitely space junk.
You know, can we do anything about it? Can we bring it back in? Can we deflect it and burn it up? Can we,
there's a lot of research, and what's very interesting is spy satellites. Mm-hmm. So some of that space junk, it could be a spy satellite. So there's a lot of different countries that play here that have these high technology satellites that are in orbit, and they're always fighting with each other. And they have I read this really
like
great
a game
article.
Of chess.
It really is. But I read a great article where they had schematics, and who knows whether they were just hypothetical or if these things actually exist, but I wouldn't be surprised. Certain satellites have like a little grabby arm that could grab another satellite. Some of them had weaponry. Some of them were disguised to look like space junk, and they could fly over to another satellite and like get circuits or do something to it, like R2D2. Like,
Yeah.
There's a lot, and it's very interesting. But when you talk about the problem of space junk, there is a lot of it out there. Astronomers are very concerned. And there's research being done about how do they grab it? I think they're designing things that have little arms to grab it, because you can't. It's very sensitive. You can't let it crash into Earth because there's chemicals and shit in those things. They don't want them to crash into the ocean. That was a big fear. They don't want to send them out into space because then they could fly back at us. They can't burn them for some reason. There's a lot of. This is where we should find a scientist to come on and talk about this stuff.
So yeah, for sure. Some of them though actually can burn up and do.
Right.
I mean, there's satellites that fall down to Earth quite often.
Yeah.
Most recently, I think, was that Chinese satellite that came down that they predicted at a certain time.
Right.
I mean, so they can and will come down, but that's
Some
the other.
of our design
That's the
for
other
that.
thing too, where if you have these paths that cross, and whether there's ill play involved, in meaning that it's a spy satellite that's messing with it,
Yeah.
or if it's just the natural trajectory of the orbit itself that crosses paths and creates, fragments and creates problems, because that's a huge thing with the space station. Like when you go out and do spacewalks, you have to be very careful, as well as just the International Space Station itself, especially when people are on it all of the time. And, if that gets struck by space debris, where are they going?
Yeah.
They're screwed.
Yeah.
So it plays a much bigger role, and like you said, the chemicals in that. So if it comes back down to Earth,
there's a lot of problems.
Oh yeah.
So the bottom line is humans are trash, and we're making the trash out of the planet. We're just trash. Is that it? Because it seems like we're fucking up every atmosphere that there is to fuck up. We fucked up space. We fucked up the oceans. We fucked up land.
I'll tell you why.
Is there hope?
I'll tell you why. And it's because when I tried classifying your species on this planet, I could only come up with one thing. You are similar to a virus. You move into an area, you multiply, you strip its resources, and then you move on. Just like a virus.
Yeah. Sounds like locusts.
Well, they're also viruses too.
Trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to talk about. I don't think climate change is real. It's happening.
Well, we had to get. I wanted to know your idea on the gas tax, or I mean, not the gas tax.
Oh the beef tax.
The beef tax.
So, it depends on what it's for. Like, I am an open person, so show me why you have to do it, where the money's going to go, why, and show me research. Also, things are so complicated. It's always much more complicated than it seems.
I, for one, am not in favor of a tax for things that we eat.
No.
Because that's our food.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but if you're vegetarian, you don't like hearing this, too fucking bad, but we are a species that eats both animals and plants. We need to survive. And so we're going to eat meat as a species because we need the protein, because we need the nutrients, because of all this other fun stuff. And cows are, one of the species that for some reason we just gravitated to. I don't know why. I didn't make that. We could have done elk. We could have done moose. Who knows? But we did cow, maybe because it's slow and easy to kill.
That's exactly it.
But, they're doing a lot of things that, whether you agree with, there's certain, again, that's a whole complex thing. But is it humane to shoot it in the back of the head and kill it immediately, or let an animal, eat it while it's still alive? And is that more humane because it's the natural way? Or is it that we're trying to inflict our will on other animals by saying, oh, no, sorry, you can't do that either. So Mr. Wolf, you can't eat the cow because that's not, we don't do that. Nature doesn't care.
I think we have to get back into balance. I saw a great documentary about a farmer who was running a sustainable farm. So it was like free range chickens and free range everything. But the way that it worked is everything was an ecosystem.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
And
you said the key word is sustainable.
Sustainable ecosystem. So like the chickens would feed, and I'd have to rewatch it to see all the inner workings, but everything was intertwined, and there wasn't mass produced, which is environmentally bad. The cows, the cow farming is what the problem is.
Well, it's factory farming than anything else. It's the factory farming. So there's issues with that, but there's other types of farming besides the factory style farming.
Yeah.
And yes, I agree. Factory farming is a major problem,
Right.
Because then you're getting into the life cycle of that creature. With the problems there, but then you're getting into a lot of different things. So, the question is, it's how do you fix those things, and it's can somebody like you and I actually come up with plans, or do we actually rely on other people who would be more apt to answer those questions?
It's small things. So what I've done is I didn't have much physical assets. I didn't have a lot of things, but I've given away a lot of stuff that I did have. I've just, I've given a deck of cards to this person. I've given DVDs to this person. I am trying to live a more minimalist type lifestyle where I still have some things, but also just small things. Like I'm trying to use a detergent that is biodegradable to wash my clothes. I'm switching
That's also
to
safe without chemicals, correct?
Yeah, that too.
Because what we were talking about previously with like the way some of those
Of course, I
chemicals
started with me.
Yeah, but some of those chemicals can be unsafe because
Well, fuck the environment. I only cared about me, so I switched my deodorant because I don't know if aluminum in deodorant causes cancer. Who knows? But I don't want to take the chance, so I switched my deodorant. I switched my shampoo. I bought new soap. I'm doing one step at a time.
So that's what that smell is.
Yeah, that's definitely what it is. I might get a
I'm just
bamboo
kidding.
toothbrush. So toothbrush, you wouldn't think toothbrushes are plastic.
Yep.
So I'm going to get a bamboo toothbrush with the little natural hairs that bristles for your teeth. It's just small things, and I've eliminated a lot of stuff. But I think we need to should we all go back to living like we live in the 1600s?
That's not going to happen.
Okay.
Again, you're not going to go backwards when you have certain luxuries because people are apt to this lifestyle. So you can't go back and say, oh, we're going to go back to the 1600s. No, what you have to do is find how to keep these luxuries, but do it in a sustainable way.
Right.
So if you can do that, hey, great. So if I can survive with electricity, if I can survive with heat and gas, heat and cool, and depending on the season, and if I can do these things, but we can do it in a sustainable way, that's on a mass-produced way, then yeah, we're going to have real changes. But the problem is, you're not going to get somebody to say, "Oh, I'm going to go back to the 1600s," because that's not realistic.
It's definitely not. So technology can solve all problems. So would you pay twice as much, maybe 3 times as much for your iPhone if it was 100% biodegradable, if in the future you're ensuring that we have more resources to continue for you to have the iPhone?
Well, Aaron,
would you pay 3 times more for it?
I'm glad you actually brought that up because the iPhone 11, this is not the iPhone 11, but the iPhone 11, they're actually doing more things to the iPhone to make it so they can reuse the elements, rare earth elements. They're actually the leader right now. Yeah. And there was, if you want to watch, there's a channel called Jerry Rig Everything on YouTube, and he did a breakdown of the iPhone 11 Pro, I think it was, and he was talking about it. But yeah, iPhone, or Apple, I should say, is doing a lot of things that are trying to make the phone itself more recyclable and reusable, which is a great step in the right direction.
For sure. So
they're doing a lot of different things in that aspect. So that's a great thing. Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up because it's already happening. Yeah. So yeah, like I said, the rare earth elements, they're making easier to reuse. The components in it are better to be used.
Right.
So that's the whole thing. And then it comes down to, instead of us throwing things out and just saying, fuck it, we're actually saying, here, Apple Store, here's my phone.
Yeah.
I
Send it
used to
back.
use this.
Yeah.
Give me $150 towards the new phone.
Right.
Because that's what the elements and the pieces and everything in there are worth. So, give me that for a new phone. But again, one of the other things that we should do, why do we have to upgrade every single year?
Yeah.
Why do we need to put so many millions of units into people's pockets? Because, well, we need to make sure we're still $1 trillion company. So, I mean, my phone's the iPhone 10.
Yeah.
And so this is going on it's 2 full years old, and I'm not planning on upgrading. So I if anything, I may get the iPhone next year. So I'll have this phone for 3 full years.
Yeah.
But we're still a year away. In a year, I might say, I don't really care. I can continue on. Like, if my phone still works perfectly fine, if I have to get the battery exchanged, if that's really the problem, I can always do that. And it's like getting maybe like a new gas tank in the car and a new gas system, meaning a whole fuel lines, fuel injectors, all of it. So it runs good again. It might not run new, but at least it's running new, like good. So, I mean, that's the whole other thing. And like you said, with the whole minimalist lifestyle too, is why do we have to have the latest and greatest and newest thing all of the time? Why can't we just like, okay, I have a 3-year-old iPhone.
Yeah.
What does it matter? I don't need to have the latest and greatest one. Sure, the bells and whistles are nice. I have 3 cameras on the back instead of 2, but really, does that make a difference?
No, not for me. I think my phone is 5 or 6 years old and works fine. One thing I really like is the battery is replaceable.
Yeah.
That's a great, I don't know if they got away from that, but my battery was $8. Ordered it and I got a brand new one. I've never used it because the phone that I had before, the battery went dead after about 10 years. So I thought, well, I better get another battery. So when I got this phone, I ordered a replacement battery. I've never used it. The battery works fine. But more importantly, this is still made out of plastic. There's plastic here. There's plastic there. And the problem seems to be plastic. That's what everyone's saying is one of the big problems is plastic.
Yeah.
Can we get away from using the traditional style of plastic? Would you
absolutely.
pay a little bit more or a lot more? Because the new technology that's coming out, the article that I read, when you have something, there's a ton of stuff I've read over the years where colleges, labs, they discover these new technologies to help people. And they have the technology, but it never becomes mainstream because of the cost. So people aren't willing to pay a penny or two more for something. Well, not even hundreds of dollars.
Okay, one of the big things, though, that's good is the fact that they're doing so much work with hemp now. Because it's a plant or weed or whatever you want to call it, that is showing many different signs on what it can be used for. So you can make it into biodegradable fuel. You can make it into biodegradable plastic. You can make it into textile. You can make it into all of these different things. But it's all biodegradable.
Right.
So a water bottle that's hemp plastic can break down like normal. So you can put it down 28 days later or whatever it might be. I don't know the time frame. It's broken down and it's back into the ground and it's reusable into the ecosystem, not necessarily reused as a product itself, but reusable into the larger scheme of the world that's outside product.
So if this takes a metric liter of fuel to make, and then the hemp takes a gallon or more. Like, I'm using a wrong example, but if the hemp takes more fuel and more energy to produce and more work to produce than just the cheaper way of making the cheap throwaway plastic bottle. That is what the problem is the cost. So people are going to go,
I don't know.
I'm not going to buy this water bottle for $1.50. Why would I buy the hemp one that's $5?
I don't know if that's actually the case when it comes to hemp. I think
That's
it's
what we have to find out.
I think it's because the illegality of growing, cultivating hemp to begin with was the problem, and the ban on growing it was much more.
Well,
is
that's
much
only
more
in
of
the
an
U.S.
issue.
There's other countries around the world that can grow hemp.
Yeah.
So why aren't they producing all this stuff? And
Well,
if they
yeah,
did,
that's-
but it's always and that's a good example. But it's when it comes to why we don't have everything recyclable and everyone lives in a perfectly biodegradable ecosystem, it's because of the cost. Because companies don't want to spend that extra, even some cases pennies, but most cases dollars, on that price per unit, when in the long run we're just only hurting ourselves because we're all sick. Everyone's getting sick and obese and having health problems, and we're ruining the planet. So the end cost to have cheap things is much greater than just producing things properly in the first place.
Yeah, but some of it's also to the technology that's there. Like there might be, we found a way where we can do this, and they don't ask its toll on the ecosystem because they're not looking at it that way.
Right.
But when you're looking at a sustainable product that could be potentially, they might not be looking at that because, again, it's the infrastructure that's set up in a way that might be outing it versus accepting of it. So yeah, like I said, it'll be really interesting to see what happens when hemp cultivation can start on a much more mass-produced scale, and see if what its ecological toll would be on the planet itself. But from what I've heard, again, I don't know the specifics of it because it's not figured out exactly just yet, but from what I've heard, there's a lot of benefits for the hemp plant itself. And if we can start, besides just going and smoking it, but you can use stock for a lot of different things. So, can it be just better? Because it'll probably be better than a lot of your textiles. It'll be a lot better than, you can use hemp paper again, which can break down. And
What is the difference between hemp and cannabis? Isn't there a difference?
No.
Isn't hemp the male plant?
Hemp is the same thing. It's just cannabis, like the stuff that we smoke is just the bud on it. But
on the male plant?
I'm talking about the stalk itself. Like
Okay.
there's a lot of different uses for the plant overall besides just getting high.
Yeah, I don't know about any of this
and
stuff.
even medical. Yeah, there's a lot of different things out there. So it just depends on like I said, right now there's a lot of areas where you couldn't cultivate it. And now that cultivation is, I guess, starting to launch. Like I just saw a quick article. I didn't read it. I didn't open it up, but I just saw a quick article where they were talking about, which I saved it and I'm going to read it later. But they were talking about how hemp wood might be starting, like for wood floors and things like that. So they're looking at that because one of the things too is it can grow so much quicker than a tree. So you can have, a tree grow X amount of years before it's ready for harvesting. And you can have a hemp plant grow in a much quicker time frame, kind of somewhat similar to bamboo and how fast bamboo can grow. So there's a lot of different things.
Oh, very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So according to the interweb, hemp is a strain of cannabis sativa that is used. So it's a specific strain that is used for different applications of what you said. It's the fastest growing of the strains, and it's been used for over 10,000 years as a fiber for clothing and textiles. Industrial hemp is derived from a species of cannabis sativa and is unique. Hemp has a lower concentration of the psychoactive drug THC and higher concentration of CBD, which decreases its psychoactive effects. Well, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not claiming to be any type of expert in the hemp field. There's a lot of
I don't know.
There's
I
a
don't
lot
know
of
anything
things.
about it.
There's a lot of things though that it can be made into.
Sure.
So I don't know. I think its ecological toll would be less because of how fast it can grow.
Oh, for sure.
But I mean, how much water does it need? How much sunlight does it need? Like, where can it grow versus where can it grow?
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot of different factors when it comes to it. But I think overall, it's probably going to be much better for the environment because it can be made in so many different applications. Like I said, one plastic. You can make a biodegradable plastic bottle, and how much more would it really end up being?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, but
it'll
to
be
a
interesting
company
to see.
that has a bottom line, this is where we need to have a shift in culture, where we have to say, look, corporate profits are not as important as a sustainable environment for humans to live. There aren't going to be any corporate profits if no human beings are in existence anymore.
Well,
that's
yeah,
the fact
but,
of the matter.
I mean, you have the ability to make profits. Yes.
Yeah.
I get that. But, being responsible about things is another aspect.
Yeah.
And I think that, you're right. It needs to be a cultural shift, but we also have to have a long game, and we have to look at it in the long. Wow, you're dropping water bottles. At least you're not hitting the mic
My
this
drinking
time.
problem.
At least you're not hitting the mic and going all crazy that way.
My drinking
But
problem.
I think we're gonna need. Oh my God, I just got distracted on where I was going with that.
Well, long term.
Yes, long-term thinking. That's right.
It is. You're 100% right. And that's why you see a lot of the climate has been in the news recently, is because there has been protests that are saying to these giant companies and corporations to be more conscious of the environment and to start having overall longevity and future thinking rather than just haphazardly ordering. Or what if it's cheaper to dump chemicals overseas than it is to responsibly take care of them? Like, it's those kind of choices. Well, it's cheaper just to dump this in the ocean. No one will ever. Who cares? And everything has an impact on our environment. And that's where the thinking needs to change, and profits. Here's my question. I'm glad you brought this up, because you being a parent, what I've seen allegedly.
Yes, I am.
Okay. So what I've seen is a bunch of young kids these days that are protesting climate change. But I remember seeing at the Washington, D.C. LGBTQ It's Okay demonstration, there's a lot of young kids that were there, and there was a lot of young kids this time protesting the environment. Now, all well and good for them, but sometimes parents have projected their agenda onto their children, and their children don't really grasp why they're there or what they're doing or why they're holding that sign. Some of them do, because kids are intelligent. But the ones that are blatantly being used by their parents as, their own agenda.
Well, I'm going to take one step further and not just say climate change, but social issue.
Yes.
Let's go with
term.
social
issues of the modern day society. Why? I don't understand if you're a parent, because you're a parent and I know you would never do this. Why do you think that it's okay to have a developing child who's supposed to be learning about the world? Why are you using them as your little pawn to push your agenda? It makes me very angry.
I'm going to say, there could be a lot of different aspects on the reasons why. It's not just one clear-cut answer.
But should it be allowed?
It happens all the time. I don't think it's going to change, but I mean, it's almost kind of like the situation where a parent would intentionally hurt their children, meaning they'd put like Drano in their food.
Okay.
Like that was a
It's
big
Munchausen
thing.
syndrome.
Yeah, where they would keep them sick,
Yeah.
so they would get the attention for it.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a transformation of that type of thing where you're not
definitely
actually hurting the child, but like my thoughts and my beliefs are going to be instilled into my child because it's just, monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah.
So what you do, your child will pick up on. They'll pick up on your mannerisms. They'll pick up on how you react. They'll pick up on everything. They know, and that's what because they're literally a clean slate. They have nothing before them. They have nothing. Everything is external.
Yep.
And then internalized from the external.
Yep.
So you can make up nature versus nurture, but I'm not going down that path. I'm not talking about nature nurture. I'm talking about the fact that how we react and what's socially acceptable and what's not, that's all learned. So when it comes down to those types of factors, like I said, it could be that you're trying to or it could be like the John Bonet instance where like you are trying to get your child this child pageant, and these pageants are absolutely ridiculous,
so crazy,
but yet you're living out your fantasy because either you couldn't do it or you're too old or whatever it might be, and you're trying to push it on your child to do it. So it's like, it's all variations of the same. Like for me, I ultimately want her to grow up and make her choices and make her decisions, but do it in an informed manner. Right. So that means you look at it from all angles that you can and with whatever knowledge is available.
Okay.
And make the decision based for you.
So you're not going to take her down to the Occupy Wall Street protest and have her
holding
the sign that says the stock market is bad. And, at 4 years old, you're holding your little agenda sign. You're not taking her
because
to
she would have zero knowledge of what that means.
Yeah, exactly.
Once there's stages of this. Like that girl that was at How Dare You, which I'm sure I don't know what the fuck her name is. But it's like, you're putting, again, you're appealing to the emotions of how dare you, you're stealing my childhood. Oh, you know what? You don't know jack shit.
Yeah.
Like, if you're that stressed out about like climate, go talk to somebody.
Right.
We don't, when it comes to climate, we don't know it's what the future will hold. We don't know what things are going to look like. There's conflicting reports all over the place. So we don't know, is the Atlantic Ocean going to stop?
Yeah.
Is
Florida's going to be underwater?
Are hurricanes going to get so massive that it's the entire Gulf of Mexico that hits the U.S. and causes all this havoc? Are we going to dump 1.5 foot of rain in a localized area for a long time? We don't know how it's going to look. We don't know. We just don't know. We don't know that information. Nobody does. It's a future of realm of possibilities. So like to say, oh, the world's going to end in 10 years, or we can't say that stuff because we don't know.
Right.
But like when it comes to social issue, it's like whatever the hot topic is. And like, I think celebrities use it to further their validity, to make them maybe mainstream or talked about or in the news or something. So then, instead of their career maybe hitting a wall or maybe they're having some sort of issue. I don't know.
That's what my issue is. And I think kids are smart and we need to listen to them. We definitely do, because just to say that they're young and they don't know anything, well, kids, they can have extremely intelligent thoughts, extremely intelligent opinions about the world, and we should listen to them, but it needs to be their own educated opinions. What I have a problem with is when parents use their kids for whatever agenda that they're using it for.
and here's the other thing too. It's not just parents that are doing it.
Yeah,
it's,
for
it's
sure.
the school system
Yeah.
that they're in, and it's even the politicians that are in that area. Because what happened just recently? The politicians are calling, let's have a school strike to strike on climate change. Well, I'm sorry, dude. That's the stupidest fucking idea I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
Yes, it's an important thing to talk about, but so is a child's education.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. We have parents using children to further their own agenda. But you know what? I have the same problem with parents who bring their children to concerts. Do not bring your children to concerts.
Well, it depends on the concert. If it's a children's concert, that's one thing. But if you're taking them to
to
freaking
Metallica, don't bring your kid. You don't need a 6-year-old at Metallica. Like we used to have a drinking game. Because
there's a lot of things I wouldn't bring children to that are,
sure.
and one of them.
Well, the parents think they're being cool, and I'm gonna expose. I like this music, so my kid is gonna like this music too, and I'm gonna bring them here, and there's gonna be adults that are gonna spill beer on them and burn them with cigarettes, and it's gonna be great.
Yeah,
that's what happened.
It's not, and it's not an area that a child should be. Like they should not see that.
Plus, they don't care about your music.
You can't bring a child to a bar for a
Right,
reason.
right.
You know, there's a lot of drunk people. There's a lot of people doing stupid shit.
Yep. One of the saddest things I've ever seen in my life was when I was at a Grateful Dead concert, and there was this. The girl had to be, I don't even know if it was a boy or a girl. It was a little blonde-headed kid, had to be probably 3 years old. And first they were digging in the garbage cans in the big green garbage bins to get like bottles and cans. Their parents had them rooting around in this dirty, filthy garbage can to bring the cans to them, right? Then the poor little kid was holding up its little finger going one as if it needed a ticket for the concert, because apparently you hold up your finger like this when you need a ticket. So these parents had this kid who was 3 years old rooting for the garbage for probably cans for money, and then had him out there with his little finger up like this. It was so sad. I wanted to just like, does that kid even have a chance at having a normal life?
Well, I mean, they probably could have a normal life, but I mean here's the thing: you can't make a assumption based on what you saw right there, or a judgment call based on what you saw, because here's the thing: why maybe they're looking for cans because they got laid off.
No,
you don't. I mean, you don't know the situation of the story before that.
Let me be more clear. So these are Grateful Dead following hippies who follow on tour. The Grateful Dead.
That's called irresponsible parenting.
Exactly.
And here's the thing. Let's separate irresponsible parenting to parents who push an agenda on their child.
For sure.
Whether they do it on purpose or unconsciously. Those are two different parents right there.
For sure.
The irresponsible parents that bring their child on the road to run around
horrible.
the Grateful Dead is not the right thing to do, especially because it's probably late at night as well too, before you get that kid to sleep.
I'll just never forget its poor little dirty face, like with its little finger up and like rooting around and probably cut itself on glass. A poor kid.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of problems there, but again, that's a different avenue of what we were bringing up before.
I was just parenting in general.
Yeah, when you're talking about the type of parent that is using the social a social not platform, but a social issue to say that they're woke or whatever it might be, when the child has no grasp of what it actually means, then I don't understand the appeal. I mean, is it just going to be like the emotional? Are you trying to gain validation from the what you think would be considered the winning tribe.
Yeah. Well, I think that
or the winning side.
I think that because their child is getting the attention, that's a win for them. Look how great I did. My child's getting the attention.
Yeah, and
that's a direct reflection of me.
Exactly, and that goes back again to what I think. Like I said, with the parent who's making their child sick on purpose, so they have the attention. Oh, my child's sick. Blah blah blah, and it's a way for them to bolster themselves or get validated for themselves because they have maybe their own issues or there's whatever it could be. Or, I mean, there's a lot of things, but we as parents will always imprint on our children, however it works. Whether I have my own thoughts, I have my own beliefs, I have my own assumptions, I have my own, just background of stuff. And I try to keep an open mind on everything and embrace all possibilities because, frankly, a lot of the times we don't have conclusiveness per se because there's a lot of openness to things.
Sure.
So I try to keep my sense of wonderment open and alive, but I hope to emulate that in her and bring that about where she also questions things and looks at things from different angles and comes up with the most appropriate answer or the most thought out or well-rounded answer when it comes to certain issues or when it comes to certain beliefs or policies or whatever it might be. So, I mean, I hope that. So, that's my way and that's going to emulate onto her. But like another person could say, oh, well, I believe point A, point C, and point Q, and you need to believe that too. Mm-hmm. And I look at the world through a tunnel and I just see this little tiny speck of things and I don't embrace other thoughts or other process or other ideas. I just look at this one way and this one way only, and this is how we look at things. And if the child says why, and you can't answer that besides because that's the way we do it or because I said so, if you can't give them a real, ultimately you're going to get to that. Like you can answer the question so many ways until the knowledge just runs out. But if you can only say because I said so or that's the way we do things or whatever it might be without giving a rational reason on why, then you're just looking at the world one viewpoint. And you're going to imprint on the child that way where they might look at it and your way could be wrong, your way could be right, your way could be indifferent, your way could be beneficial, not beneficial. There's a lot of different ways it could be taken depending on how it is, what it is, and all this. So it's a lot of factors and it's a very complex thing. But yeah, when you come down to a social issue, no, sorry. Like children, we need to teach children both sides or all sides. Mm-hmm. What was it? The book that Rogan had, he had the one guy on, it was about marijuana. And I think it was called The Truth About Marijuana, but he only offered one-sided viewpoints. Yeah, he was
cherry picking.
And he cherry picked the data instead of offering the full spectrum of viewpoints. Like that's a disservice to people. It is a disservice because you're trying to do the research, but you're only saying, well, this is my viewpoint, this is what I think, and this is what I'm going to
So I select things to support my argument. And you know what sucks about that? That guy did have some great points, mm-hmm. and he could have easily made his point using all of the facts and research and still say, yes, here's all of the evidence and all of the research, and I'm only going to cherry pick these specific stories that mm-hmm. bolster my agenda. And he still could have made his point. One of the good points that he made is that there is a correlation between violence and acquiring marijuana and smoking marijuana. It is an occurrence that does happen. Some people are addicts. They freak out if they don't get their pot, and they can perpetrate violence. It is true. You can say, well, generally this is a relatively safe substance, but there are risks, and here's what the risks are,
Yeah.
and still prove your point. He did a huge disservice to his own cause by cherry picking these ridiculous things. And that made
Absolutely.
me mad because he did have a lot of really good points.
Oh yeah, I mean he had great points, and that's the whole thing. Like you can't say, and again, you can't say definitively
Right.
this or that
Yeah.
because every single person's different. They're
very nuanced.
Their chemical makeup is just varianced a little bit, and that variance could sway one way or the other when it comes to like a marijuana induction, but. And that's the whole thing. Like again, you label it the truth about marijuana, so you're only offering this small amount
And calling
when
it the
there's-
truth.
Yeah, when there's this much that you've left out because you want to further validate your thoughts and your opinions,
Right.
and try to force that information out on other people. When in fact, you could have looked at it from a objective standpoint, and then at the end, after you've submitted all of the facts, or of a generalization of all sides of the facts, you could say, well, for me, this is in my conclusion of my opinions after looking at the research I've found.
Yeah.
I think that marijuana is a substance that needs to be treated with respect because of these few issues I've seen.
And not only that, because I've done this research, I choose not to smoke marijuana because these are the risks that I'm not willing to take.
Yeah.
But you can't say you can't smoke marijuana because these are the risks that I'm not willing to take. That's what the problem is in society. And there are risks. So I wanted to be more clear about my stance on substances because they all do have risks. And there is a very nuanced thing. It's a very fine line because I'm a person who says, you don't have the right to tell me what I can do. You didn't create the universe. You didn't create these substances. Who are you to tell me that I can't take these substances? But on the other hand, these substances do cause addiction. They do cause problems. And it's a very fine line.
Hold on. Don't say do cause. Say have the potential to cause addiction.
Yep.
Because again, it's not a definitive thing for all people. I've
Exactly.
smoked weed many times, but I'm not addicted. Like I don't have to be like, oh, I got to go get it. I can be like, oh, you know what? I feel like doing it today. Cool. Or, I decide not to. But again, it's the potential of it being addictive
Right.
on any substance. It's not
Right.
just to keep it. So
Yeah. And there is a percentage of people who do get addicted, and when they do get addicted, then they'll resort to stealing or violence. But that can happen with anything. It can happen with gambling. It could happen with food. It could happen with anything. People have stolen to buy more. I was watching a hilarious video where a guy robbed his sister of $1,200 so he could buy more Pokemons.
yeah,
I don't
but-
even know what Pokemons is, but addiction is a human.
Yeah, but here again, you can say correlation, but not causation.
Exactly.
And again, we can't say like
so we're
if you're
not banning
addicted.
Pokemon because people are stealing to get more Pokemon. So it's the same thing with substances. So it's a fine line where I don't think another person has the right to tell me what substance I can take. But on the other hand, the negative effects towards society, people stealing and things like that also have to be weighed. So there has to be some kind of balance.
Yeah, but there's it's a little bit more complex than just that because here's the thing: some of these substances just about all of these substances are illegal, and if you decriminalized or legalized these substances and made them easier to get or educated in a different manner, then what is to say, I mean, and that's the whole thing. It comes down to education. So if again, and I'm right there with you. You can't tell me what to do when in a substance, what goes into my body or what I want to do. It's my choice. But then I should also do the research and figure out if this is going to be good for me, if this is going to be bad for me, and a lot of different factors, because it could be something that I take that is going to be beneficial, or it could be detrimental, or somewhere in between, or neutral, or nothing, or whatever it might be. So it could just be, something, but that's the whole thing. You need to figure out your idea and your knowledge based on the information that is out there. And you need to do the research. So if you're like, hey, yeah, I want to try, shrooms or something. I want to try some mushrooms, some of the magic shrooms. You might want to figure out all aspects of it. I've heard from this person that it's like this wonderful trip, and you can see so many different things and feel so many different things, and you're on an interdimensional plane. But then there's the other people who, this is what happened to them and they had very bad experiences. And so there's a lot of issues, and it comes down to, educating yourself and making the correct decisions based upon yourself. But again, not allowing somebody else to say you can or cannot take these things.
Right. My body, my choice.
Yeah. And my education.
Right. So, yeah, you have to educate people. And also the approach that you take. So, yes, there is a percentage risk. So, on average, I think something like 6% of people who try, let's say, heroin or cocaine, I can't remember which one it is. One of them has a 6% addictive rate, right? So 6% of the amount of people who try that drug are going to become addicted to that drug, right? That's a very small percentage when you look at it overall, but there is that 6% risk. So what do we do with those 6% of people who become addicted to that specific substance? Do we have people that go knock down their doors and are stalking them and put them in little cages? Do we have a support system for them where they can get the help and treatment that they need to not be addicted? What do we do? What is the policy for handling those people who are addicted?
Here's the other the problem though with that is it's as we alluded to, it's my body, my choice. If they become addicted and they don't want to receive the help, why would you feel compelled that we would have to force help onto them?
Exactly.
And that's the whole issue too.
No, what we need to do is hire a whole bunch of people. We need to have them undercover. We need to have them make purchases. And then we need to snatch those people and we need to put them in a cage. But not only that, we have to do it as violently as we possibly can.
And make them make them outcasts of society and say that they're bad people and horrible people.
That's definitely the way to go.
You can't do that type of stuff because otherwise you'll look just like them.
Yeah, that's definitely the way to go. And it's working beautifully.
Now, you know what? Let me tell you, when it comes to addiction, the way we handle that entirely is wrong. Mm-hmm. Again, a lot of these addictive substances are illegal. And because of the hardness to get to them, it can cause problems where people will, overdose, or things are laced, or there's issues with it. If we wanted to stop fentanyl from killing people, we could have safe injection sites where they can go and get their stuff administered by a nurse or a doctor with the education that's there, and say, hey, look, do you want to hear about it? No. Okay, cool. No problem.
Yeah.
Next time they come in, hey, do you want to hear about it? No. The next time, hey, do you want to hear about the education of it? You know what? Talk to me about it.
Yeah.
What's going on? And, maybe they never break through. Maybe they do break through. Maybe who knows? But, at least you're taking away the risk of them ODing with something that's laced with a bad product, or the just ODing in general because maybe they don't have the knowledge. Then the other thing, the flip side too, is that we got to remember a lot of the times that people are on heroin is because they got addicted to pain pills that are opiates, that, people were getting very easily at one point. And then they put in this sweeping legislation that said, nope, everything stopped. It's much different now. And overnight, these people who were addicted to it had no way of getting it again, or the knowledge or know-how or education on how to stop or wean off of it. And that's the thing. Like, so doctors, when prescribing this medication, they also have to take the initiative, I think, after the fact to say, look, this is a highly addictive substance. And what we want to do is we want to give this to you to help with the pain for what you're going to experience or may be experiencing. But we're also going to work with you at weaning you off.
Right.
So it's not going to affect you after the treatment.
Yep.
And then if you still are addicted, we're not going to look at you in a negative light or a negative way, but we can actually embrace the problems that somebody may have. But again,
and here's some resources.
and
there's a lot of research on addiction, and there's a lot of help out there.
But again, it comes down to if they want the help or not.
Exactly.
So, I mean, we could sit there and say, yeah, these people who were taking these pain pills that were prescribed by doctors that can't get them anymore, that turn to heroin or turn to other, forms of drug use or whatever it might be, they might not see it as a bad thing. They might look at it and say, hey, you know what? I enjoy it. Could they be destructive to their life? Maybe. I mean, we don't know.
We have laws for that, though. So, like, if someone is to the point where they're going to go rob and steal or they're hurting people or something, we have laws to cover all of that stuff.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing when it comes down to, do they have the ability to say, look, this is a problem for me.
Right.
But that's also another thing. Like, if you say, like, for somebody to say, I have a problem, that's a huge thing. And that's looked at so negatively from the outside world that if you say, hey, I have a problem, then you could be at a point where you're probably so far beyond this that you're like, how the fuck did I get here?
Right.
But before, you're like, oh, I have a little bit of a problem, but I don't want to say anything.
Right.
I'm just going to try to work through it.
Right.
And then you work through it the way you think you could, but because this substance is so addictive or detrimental or whatever the thing is, you continue down this path. And you just don't know any better because because the negativeness of admitting that you have a problem at the point you do, and trying to look for help, and the unknowing of, oh, am I going to get in trouble? Am I thinking you're going to get in trouble? When in fact we shouldn't be looking at it that way. We should completely, again, this is a social change where we need to look at it in a whole different light, a whole different mindset, and say, hey, good job at doing what you needed to do to get right.
Let us help you. See, that's the whole problem is, one, there's a big stigma of people who actually want to who come to the point where, like, I hit rock bottom. I can't continue to live my life this way. I need help. That's one. And people are embarrassed to even say that they need help. And then two, when they do try to get that help, there are not the resources for them. They may not have anywhere to go. They try to go to rehab. Well, we only have 10 beds and they're all full. So, meanwhile, we're busy spending all this time and money beating down people's doors, putting them in cages. You think of, like, the death toll of, like, the cartel and just so many. So, and the time and effort of the people who are tracking the cartel and all the undercover police who are out there trying to set up some kid, it's like the whole system is just so crazy. It needs to be completely shifted. If all that time and effort that's like spent of, like, why do you have to be undercover and hide out and try to set somebody up, and then you're going to court and going to trial, and then you're throwing them in jail,
and then not only that, you're trying to, like, work through them to get to the next person, to get to the next person. So you give them a plea deal, and then you're saying, okay, well, we'll forgive this. You can't do it again, but you got to give us somebody.
And snitch on your friends, and they're going to find out that you're a snitch, and they're going to kill you. The whole thing is just a crazy system where it's like, okay, there's so much money, time, and effort being spent into sneaking around the issue that human beings are always going to try to get high, no matter what. It's never going to change. We have to just accept it. There's always going to be a percentage of people who have a problem with it. We need to accept that and try to mitigate our risk as best as we can, provide services rather than punishment. It's crazy. And I don't know. The funny thing is, the World Health Organization has recommended for the past 10 years that narcotics need to be legalized and just regulated. You're never going to stop it. They are the leading edge of intelligent decisions. I always come out every time I read something from the World Health. It's important and it makes sense and it's well thought out, but nobody's listening to them. Why aren't we listening to them? I don't get it. Like, there's so many, and again, you're right. It's emotional decisions. It's the same thing with vaping. People see a person way over there blowing out a giant cloud of vape. They're outside. The person over there vaping has no effect on their life whatsoever. But the physical sight of them triggers that person. And like, oh no, that person's doing something. I don't like it. We've got to stop this. It's crazy.
And that's the big problem.
Yep.
What was the thing that you had said that a vape pen is? A personal.
Yeah, it's a personal electronic nicotine inhalant system. I'll say it for people. I'll spell it. It's a PENIS. A personal electronic nicotine inhalant system. Yeah.
I gotta say, that was absolutely hilarious when
funny?
I saw that. But I think we're gonna wrap it up.
Yep.
So do you have a quote for us?
I do have a quote, but I want to bring up one more topic.
Oh geez, how long are we gonna talk about
About
this?
10 minutes because
I don't want to go that long. I have to
Talking
go to the
about-
bathroom.
Oh, all right. Well, we can remind me to bring up woke because our friend had never heard the term woke.
Yeah, we'll talk about that
All
next
right.
time.
Chelsea Handler has come out with a special about being woke.
Okay.
So we'll have to send it to our friend who didn't know what woke is. And let me find my quote. So you talk while I find my quote.
Well, Aaron is finding his quote. I am going to talk. So talk.
All right, ready?
Yeah.
Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response and our responsibilities, our growth, and our freedom. Oh, wait. No. Let me redo it.
That's a synapse.
Yeah, I read it wrong because these words typed themselves together when I copy and pasted this quote. Ready? Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That's a quote by Viktor E. Frankl. I don't know who that is, but it was really good.
All right. Well, that was a good one. So that's the end of the podcast.
I was Aaron.
I'm Chris. Good anything where you're listening. So good day, good night, good afternoon.